All right, guys. Obviously we're back here in the restaurant with Gary Hashman and Butch Hiles, and today the guest is Jeremy Deskins, you know, jiu-jitsu guy extraordinary, right? But we're just fresh off a tournament on Saturday, so today is Sunday. We're just a day behind, and that's kind of what we've been chatting about offline here, and we'll do a little bit more. And that's kind of why we stopped, because we wanted to make sure we didn't miss any good conversation. But what I wanted to ask you, obviously we've been having these jiu-jitsu tournaments for like a long time, and you guys are a huge supporter, which is awesome, which, I'm very thankful for. But what we're talking about a couple of times here is, it'd be interesting to hear, and obviously we're not going to hear it here, but people's perspectives on this is, like, as a person running a tournament, I feel like you guys are giving your hard-earned money to come down there and compete. So my thought process always is to try to get as many matches for everybody as possible. Gary and I were actually talking before this came on. One of his students came up to me, and he was a teenager, and I thought he didn't get any matches because he said, "Hey, like, I'm just checking to see if there's any more matches for me or something." Very like normal comment, like normal statement. But I was like, "Oh man, they must have left him off some brackets." So I ran around the tournament, found 2 or 3 other teenagers, made another bracket that he competed in. They loved it. They're happy. But then talking to Gary today, they're like, "Yeah, I heard he was in a different division that he shouldn't have been in." And we had to figure out what it was. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of what I do. Like, anytime somebody asks me for something, I'm putting them in divisions." And George Euler was another. He showed up just on a whim to see what happened. There's really nobody in his weight class. But I was able to find, Zach Wiles came down, and most of our guys know, that they're like, "Hey, I might not bring my gi, but I'll bring my no gi stuff. If somebody wants to jump in, we'll jump in." And I know you're always game. Zach Humberson kicked some butt, all these guys. But anyway, he ended up having a ton of matches too that he was happy about. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent here, but my comment is really that, like, I know your answer and I know Gary's answer, but not everybody wants a bunch of matches, right? And that's fine, because I can't say that I don't get it, because I'm pretty lazy. Like, when I show up to a tournament, I'm like, yeah, like, whatever, just give me 1 or 2 and I'm good. You know what I'm saying? But that's kind of my thing. But do you guys like it, right? Do the kids like it? Do the parents like it? I mean, because they get a lot of matches, right?
Yeah, like, from speaking from a coach's perspective, like, the kids, they like a lot of matches. The parents want the kids to have a lot of matches because they want the experience. That's at least that's what the experience I've had with the parents. From where I've coached throughout over the years and everything, but even at your tournaments as well. I want the kids to have a lot of matches. So more the merrier is the way I look at it, even with myself too.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Zach from Ground Zero, like Bridgeport and up that way, made a good comment too. He's like, he didn't mean it in an offensive way, but he's like, and I think his kind of quote to me was, he didn't care to lose. Like, he looked at tournaments, especially smaller ones, as like a place to learn and get better. So, like, he said, I actually came in with a game plan to work some legs or work this or that. And so, like, obviously we know in the gym, when you're working stuff, it doesn't mean that you're an expert at it by any means, right? Like, you're probably going to screw up. And if you're doing it in a tournament stage, which quite honestly takes a lot of balls for the guys that do that, because you might lose in front of people, and that's hard for people. But yeah, so he went out there and worked on some stuff. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But he was happy. Like, he knows that he's doing it. He's like, yeah, I went with people I didn't know, that didn't know what I was working on, and it either worked or it didn't work, right?
Absolutely. To me, I think Zach is awesome. I've competed against Zach a few times. I had a super fight against Zach, our first match. He was game. He beat me with a nice arm bar. In our no-gi match, we had a match yesterday in the gi. It went my way, and I'm happy for it. I've worked really, really hard lately to get where I'm at right now too, and I know he has as well. Then we had a match in no-gi, and we were going with legs, and I'm confident in my leg game, and he ended up catching me with a really nice knee bar, and like he said, to me it's a big learning experience. I always wanna test myself, even, and I know even these like the lower belts, the belts that's lower than me, I've been submitted by lower belts, Does it mean that they're better than me? No, it just means that day they were better than me, you know? But, the way I look at it is it's a learning curve for me, and I'm growing from those experiences. Whether I win or I lose, I'm going to always gain from those experiences, you know? That's the way I look at it.
Well, I think, honestly, I think this is a big reason we lose a lot of blue belts in jiu-jitsu. Okay. And it's because they're not humble enough to accept the fact that they can lose to white belts and still be a blue belt. And I think that is something that is, once you get your blue belt and you show back up to class and all the white belts they're looking at you. They got hungry eyes, right?
Yeah.
They want a piece of that blue belt. And just because you got your blue belt, it doesn't give you superpowers. And there's that 4-stripe white belt that was, maybe he hasn't got his blue belt yet, but he's still a 4-stripe white. He's right there with you. And, I think it's good. Absolutely. Here's the thing. There are a ton of black belts in this world that if they were thrown into competition with some of these competition purple belts, could not stand like a 3-minute match with them. They get tapped. And it's hard for people to understand that. And we were talking about this. When you talk to people outside of jiu-jitsu, this is one of the things me and Butch were talking about. You talk to people outside of jiu-jitsu, they assume that a black belt is just like there's a gold standard for black belt and all black belts are the same, right? The problem is like jiu-jitsu is not McDonald's. And a double cheeseburger at one place is not a double cheeseburger at another place, right? And so when you get a black belt that is a competition black belt and he's training like 6 days a week and eating good and that is a different black belt than a black belt who is just teaching his students. And it goes all the way down, whether it's brown belts, purple belts, blue belts. There's a different level. And I've worked with a lot of people who've done jiu-jitsu. Obviously we've trained with tons of people. It's nothing against those guys who don't compete, but it is just a different level. And it's good for us to, as practitioners, as guys who want to compete a little bit, even as hobbyists, to get out there. I know Butch had some guys that got out there and tested themselves out this weekend who maybe aren't normally competitors or more hobbyists. But it's good to get out there and find out, because you don't really know. And if you enter into your first competition and you're a white belt and you get somebody who's close to their blue belt, good luck, man. It's a long day.
Well, yeah, especially like fresh blue belts or any of those things are just like you said, right? And then you got somebody that's got 4 stripes, or a lot of people don't get that, right? Like I remember, like somebody at one tournament said, "Well, he's there." I think it was a parent, but he's just a beginner, right? And it's like I think the kid didn't do very well, but it was I said, "Well, it's a white belt thing. They're all beginners." And they're like, "Well, that kid is not a beginner, right?" I said, "Well, like they haven't ranked him." Like I know what you're saying though. Like what I mean, like. But it's hard for the people that aren't in our sport to kind of understand that sometimes, especially parents, right? Because they're protective over their children. And a lot of times, like especially people that know nothing about jiu-jitsu life. I've had some weird comments. Yeah, they're like, they'll think people are out to get them sometimes, or whatever. That kid's like so much bigger than my kid, or, and it's like, no, there's a weight class and we did everything we could. And a lot of times your coach, it's funny about that story too. It's like I've had sometimes, and you guys, Jeremy, you bring kids all the time. They're the hardest for people to match up, right? Because the weights are so varying.
Absolutely.
The maturity levels vary, right? Because sometimes you could have a kid that's like 5 to 7, 60 pounds, and there's nobody. Most tournaments might bump them to 8 to 10. I try not to, because that's the risky part, right? Now that 8 to 10-year-old's a little bit more mature. It's a little bit bad. So I try not to do that, but it's like usually anything we do, we clear it with the coach and do all this. And what I was going to say that's kind of funny is most parents are always good with it until their kid starts losing. Like I've had all these conversations. They'll be like, yeah, that's fine. That's great. Don't worry about it. We're just here. And then it's like, as soon as the tide turns, they're like, act like you've tried to screw their kid or something. Not your Jim, I'm saying, or most people. There's just been a few, and I get it. I kind of I get it in a way, right? I go to other sports events, and I was at a basketball game today, and my kid, the 9-year-old basketball game, and 2 parents were fighting in the crowd. You know what I mean? I'm like, it is what it is.
And that's just honestly, to me, that's just sad. That parents would fight. like that. But like yesterday, my nephew, he's a bigger kid. He asked for more, and y'all gave him more. So he was one of the kids yesterday. He's just turned 13. But he's 200 pounds.
Yeah, well,
so he's a big kid.
He's the one that actually went with Gary's kid, I think, too. Remember at the end? Yeah,
I believe so.
yeah.
Yes.
Because that was the thing I thought. Well, the same thing. They did forget his no-gi match, actually, right? Or maybe, I don't know. Or maybe, actually, I know what happened because I went and asked. There was nobody for him because he was, like you said, way bigger than the other kids. But we made it work.
Absolutely.
We found some people, so, But and I think he did pretty well.
Yeah, he got some good matches yesterday, and I'm happy. We had a really good time yesterday, and we normally do when we go to the West Virginia go and everything. And I'm always trying to at least get a little more of my students each time, to come. And this time around, I actually had, it was more than just the kids, competing. It was me, Shelby, one of my other adult students.
Yeah, she did
and
great.
Joe, he competed as well. So it was exciting. That was Shelby's first tournament. So this was her first experience, and she won double gold yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's been loving it. And at the end of the day, I just want everybody to have a fun experience. But as parents, and I'm not a parent. Okay, I don't have kids. But I've taught kids, I helped my professor down in Florida, with kids classes, ever since I've been a blue belt, and your kids, you've got to understand that they're going to lose, and you have to accept that, and it's good for them to lose,
Absolutely. And I've always said that there are two things in life that kids need. They need a pet, and they need some sort of competition. And it's both because you need to understand loss before you have to understand real loss. And what I mean by that is the real loss of a loved one. So pets are usually going to live maybe about 10 years, depending on what kind of pet. If you get a dog, that dog's probably going to live 10 to 15 years, right? It's good for you to have a pet for that kid. That way they understand what life and death is, right?
Absolutely.
Before you have to bury a parent, before you have to bury an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, it's good to experience that as a child with a pet before you have to experience that in your loved one. Someone who can love you, like, not that dogs can't love you back or cats can't love you back, but it's just different with people, right? And the other thing is with athletics, you need a venue in order to know that if you didn't work hard enough, it will show.
Yep.
And there is no way to show that better in sports or in life than competition. It is the best. I've always thought this is the best way to prepare you for everything else in life, because nothing else is going to be really as clear cut and hard to do as athletics, whether it be football, baseball, basketball. And what I like about wrestling and jiu-jitsu is that it's individual. Everybody, listen, nobody else is out there. You can't say, hey, I blocked my guy. I didn't lose this game. You lost this game. You can't say, hey, you should have passed me the ball. If you would have passed me the ball, I would have made that shot. It's all you and the other guy. That's it. You got nobody to blame you and yourself, and you've got nobody can say that anybody else did it for you.
Exactly. It's all on you.
It's all on you.
100%. I agree, with you on that one. I really do, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I do love, combat sports in general. I was an amateur MMA fighter. I literally had 3 fights, that's it. My career in that is done though. That phase of my life is over. I loved, the moments that I had in those 3, but that time has passed, and what my calling is teaching. But just like with teaching, I want to test myself still, because I'm still hungry, as far as competition goes, and as far as my MMA career, it was cut short because of my epilepsy. and everything. But still, I feel like it wasn't meant for me anyway. You know, like I have a path that I chose, and you know, and this is the path that, you know, I was led on, you know, and I personally, you know, I love what I do, and I love the whole community since I've been living back up here in Kentucky. You know, the last 5 years, I've really connected with quite a few people, you know, including you guys. You know, I mean, Gary, we've competed against each other, man, you know, and I love it, you know, that we can be on here talking, you know, and conversing with each other, you know, even though we've competed against each other, because we made friends through jiu-jitsu, you know, and I love that. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much. And even with Butch, you know, I support your tournaments. I love bringing my kids. I love supporting the local grappling scene, and I always will, you know, 110%. So I want to make sure that we always support that, you know, and that way we can still build that relationship, you know, and we can still have, you know, a clean rivalry competition, you know, and still, you know, say, hey man, let's go have a beer or something afterwards, you know, and talk about jiu-jitsu and stuff, you know, and just have a good relationship and just help each other, you know, grow in the sport and the community.
Well, yeah, but I think I told you, Gary, you made a statement like that yesterday, that, you know, we all should support each other. And it's a beautiful statement. You know, obviously that's not exactly what you said. It was probably much nicer and longer, but it's true. It's funny, because in essence, in jiu-jitsu, right, in our room, you know, your mat, your gym, Gary's gym, my gym, everybody's trying to win anyway, right? So it's funny that if you switch that to a different gym, then that makes a rivalry. Well, they're still trying to win, and you're still trying to win. There's no difference between on the mat and the gym, right? Like, maybe the only difference is that once you're in a tournament, your adrenaline's flowing and you're going a lot harder, right? And everybody seems like a giant steroid guy, even though they're not. They're just got this the adrenaline going through. But that's you're right. I think in having a friendly rivalry is cool. It really is. That means you want to win. You should want to win. Everybody should also, if you're at a gym, you should love your gym, and you should think your gym's awesome. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be there, right? Like, I should come in and use like, I'm at the best gym, and I think we're gonna win. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying that, because you should support your people. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't even matter, like you said, like even if that day some gym did better than another gym, or this, it still does. It's not a reflection of anything, because most of the time I've seen that happen. The next year, like, people have made a lot of improvements. That's a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. Is kind of easy to figure out. It's probably very similar in other sports that I don't do. You know, I played basketball, but it's not like I was out, you know, training with a bunch of people. You just don't do that in basketball, right? And then find a guy, and then I'm like, well, your crossover's awesome. I could do that. Maybe that happens more now. That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I would have had to have drove around and found, again, maybe that's a thing now, but I'm telling you, in Cleveland, you didn't do that. Like, it's just different, right? And we've talked about before the fact that we have the opportunity to train with the legends of our sports. Whether it's a seminar, you run into them, you get to roll with them. It's amazing. You're not going to do that with LeBron James or Michael Jordan, or, you know, most of those people won't even give you the time of the day. I get it too. It's also, the whole thing's different, right? They're so famous, they can't give you the time of day. It's just a different thing, right? But since you covered the one thing, like when you're talking about epilepsy, so does that hurt you in jiu-jitsu at all? And no, is it more about head contact that you had to worry about?
It was more of I had ended up with head trauma from a wreck. Mm-hmm. And I've actually been doing really good. It's been actually a little over a year, but I've had them the last 20 years since 2001. But I've went over a year so far now without having any. Yeah. And I think because I've changed a lot of things up as far as my diet goes, making sure I'm sleeping good, all that good stuff. You know, to ensure that I'm, you know, healthy and everything. But jiu-jitsu honestly helps me. You know, I've never had any issues with, you know, being choked, like, and it hurting me, like going into a seizure or anything. I've never had a seizure on the mat before. And even in my 3 fights, I'm pretty sure my first fight I had, it took like 9 years off my life because I took so much damage, but even then, they, at the time that I only needed a blood test, I didn't have to show any sort of eye tests and stuff like that, so, and at that time I was like, the damage is done. Let's get this,
Yeah.
So I think that it probably wasn't good for me as far as taking punches to the head and stuff. But, whenever you train for so long and it just becomes engraved in you, and it's just like, man, I at least want to test myself in that area. You want to put yourself out there, and like I said, my MMA career is done, but not my like jiu-jitsu competition, I don't think it's done. It doesn't bother me. If anything, it pushes me to be healthier, because especially in the last year, I've really worked hard on getting my goals for my weight to come down in a good way. So my jiu-jitsu can be better as far as being more athletic, and just feeling better overall. I feel my lungs feel better. Just my entire body feels better. I've not had any seizures, because I've changed my lifestyle a lot more. I don't take any pharmaceutical meds, so that's a plus. And I just feel great, and I really, jiu-jitsu pushes me to make those goals happen, honestly.
Was something I wanted to talk about, because I know I've kind of watched you on your journey. Like when we competed with each other, we were competing at, now I think that when we competed, it was 220 was the weight limit, but you were already well under that. I think you were like 210 or something like that when we competed against each other.
Yeah, I was about 210. I was.
Yeah, but you're lighter than that now, right?
Yes. I'm actually 177.
Yeah.
Right now.
So what was your weight like? What was your heaviest? Where were you at your heaviest?
At my heaviest?
Yeah, tell us about. Hey, listen, I'll spill the beans first, okay? When I started jiu-jitsu, I was 270 pounds, right? And I was out of shape, and there was nothing good about anything that I was doing other than the fact that I could eat everybody out of any any buffet or whatever. Like I could out eat everybody. That was the only thing that I was going to win at. So I was 270 pounds, and I was able to cut down when I had competed in my first competition. I competed at 205. And I was lucky, I was lucky enough to be able to stave the weight off and get down to about 100. I think the lightest I got was 180. Actually, I know it was. It was 183 pounds, 0.5. And that was because I was competing at 185 was the weight class that I entered into. But now I sit around probably about 220. Like 220 to 230, somewhere in between there is where I hang out now. But what was you at your heaviest?
My heaviest, I was at 348. I was.
That's awesome. So now you're down to the 170, like 175-ish?
Yeah. And I was actually kind of talking about that the other day, and because I kind of thought about it. I'm like, man, I'm like literally half the person that I used to be. And then I ended up singing that verse out of the song. I'm half the man I used to be.
Yeah. That's pretty wild, man. That's wild. What?
And honestly, what really, I love jiu-jitsu, but really what got me into martial arts, obviously watching UFC and stuff like that. But I moved down to Florida. I got into freestyle kickboxing. There's a guy that came in, was teaching some grappling and stuff, NHB back in the day.
Yeah.
That's what we call it. But his name was Angelo Franco, out of down in Spring Hill, Florida, and stuff like that. And just a local guy, he was teaching us some grappling stuff. I kind of fell in love with it from there, and I was a big boy, and I remember back in the day, this was 2005, 2006, something like that. We had this thing called the 300-pound club. Because me and him was both big boys. But we pushed each other to start losing more weight, because we were like three in our 340s at the time, you know. So we're like, hey, let's push ourselves to get to 300, and you know, stuff like that. So we pushed. You know, that was fun because it helped us push each other. You know, and that was kind of the start of the journey of where I started loving grappling more than I loved striking, I think.
We can
And
do
I think
it
it's
more,
because I
right?
really needed it more.
Yeah, well, no, that's a big difference. I mean, both will make you lose weight, right? But I think grappling, and it definitely will, right? Because you can go 100%, you know, as often as you can, and typically you might be pretty sore, but you're not like collecting brain damage or, you know, busted legs or
Yeah.
you know, it's a different thing, right? And you can't. It's just like it's so funny to me because I have this conversation with people all the time because I legit have brain damage from boxing and all that stuff. Like, and some of it's old age. I can't remember anything anymore, and it's worse and worse. But that nobody thinks about that, right? Like, it's not that I'm trying to push that agenda or anything, but it's like I hear so much about NFL and how dangerous it is, and it is. But like, you can't avoid the head. That's what it is, right? And the way people spar is. It's not like it's just not proper. Right? Like people beat the crap
No.
out of each other, and then there's nobody telling. Like you know that most people are too tough for their own good. A fighter is a fighter's worst enemy, right? They know they have a concussion. They're not stupid. Right? Some are, but it's just like the rest of us. Like my knee hurts, I just go and I'll work through it. Well, they're working through concussions, right? And knockouts and stuff, and coming back, and that's the thing that actually is doing it. And I did the same, right? Because you have no way to tell. That's the bad thing about concussion. You're pretty sure you have one, but it's not like you have a doctor say, hey, go sit down for 20, 30 days, right? And nobody wants to do that either. So that's mainly my thing. I remember just getting the shit beat out of me. You know, because as I was learning, the people I trained with were already pro fighters. Like one was in Pride and the other guy was in K1, and that's who I trained with. I was a nobody, but the only reason I could hang is because they could beat the shit out of me and I'd still be standing up. It's not like I gave them anything. I was like a heavy bag with eyeballs, basically. But yeah, then so that was the thing. I'd come, get the shit knocked out of me, and then the next day I'd be again, and I probably had a concussion. Then I'd come the next day, and the next day, and then fight on top of it. Then I had my own fights, you know, and now, you know, unfortunately, it's a problem, which is not good. But same thing. That's why when I discovered jiu-jitsu is actually randomly, I tore my rotator cuff in a boxing match. So I couldn't box because my arm was jacked up. And so they're like, well, here's your options. You can kickbox and use your legs, which I did do. Or here's some jiu-jitsu, right? And obviously still couldn't do much jiu-jitsu with a torn rotator cuff. But we weren't that good anyway. So we just kind of played around and it was fine. You know, we knew like a guillotine, a rear naked, and some, you know, probably some arm bar or something. You know, it's not like we knew anything. But anyway, I was like, well, this is way better. Like, you mean I don't have to get hit all the time by these big monsters? And I could compete with those guys because they were just as new as me. So I was like, well, this is better. So then, you know, the switch kind of happened for me where it sounds like much like you. Then I was like, man, this is awesome. And I think it's funny. I think we all come with a similar background. Like I played college football kind of. Now, when I say that, I just want to say that I did not play totally because I was on the team and then didn't play. I quit. But I was 330 pounds because I was an offensive lineman or trying to be an offensive lineman. And so, you know, that's a different thing. So now I'm same thing. I'm like 100 pounds less than that pretty normally. But I would credit to jiu-jitsu. And I fluctuate probably like all of us do. But speaking of that, what I wanted to ask you, because everybody will want to know, how did you lose all that weight? Did you do, besides jiu-jitsu, besides the workout portion, like what did you change your diet, or how did you change it, or what was the big flip for you?
Yeah, like honestly, I cut like all the basically all the sugars out of my diet. You know, I was eating a lot of sugary stuff. I was putting sugar in my coffee. You know, so I just pretty much cut out all the sugars and everything. Started eating more fish, even though I ate a lot of fish anyway, because I'm a Florida boy and I love my fish. But still, like I cut, you know, a lot of. I didn't cut no red meat or anything out because, you know, I'm a carnivore. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But you know, cutting back on eating late at night and stuff like that. You know, not overdoing it. You know, just little things like that. It was more, I wouldn't even say a diet, you know, because I really don't like that, you know, because I do love my food, you know.
Yeah.
but more of a lifestyle change. Like I don't drink any soda whatsoever. In fact, I actually I had one soda yesterday because I wanted to ward myself. I did, and
Yeah.
I was actually talking about that today. I was like, I don't drink that stuff anymore because I know it's not good for me. But I've not had one in such a long time, so I decided to get me a Coke yesterday on the way home. Um, you know, and and I just enjoyed it a lot more than what I used to.
Yeah.
Because I've not had it in probably a year. So it's just the little things like that. I've changed. It's helped me, and I've made more of a lifestyle change than being on a diet. So, and jiu-jitsu is really what has kept me on that lifestyle change because it's made me go towards different goals, because I have goals that I want to reach. I'm still hungry for competition.
Recording in progress.
Sorry, that thing made noise. Sorry about that.
Oh, you good. Oh crap. Sorry.
Yeah, you're talking about lifestyle change. I'm sorry, I hit that button, but
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, just it's been a lifestyle change, and jiu-jitsu is really it's really helped me create more goals so I can reach those goals, and I'm hungry for competition. I'm gonna be 36 in January. I'll be receiving my black belt January 2nd. I will. So I'm going down for a camp in Florida with my professor and them to help teach a camp and everything. But that's been, that's helped push me, even more to make the goals on my weight and everything. But to push myself in jiu-jitsu competition because I do feel a lot better at the weight that I'm at. I feel more athletic. My lungs feel better. I just feel overall better. I feel and believe me, I know I don't win a lot, and I have lost a crap ton at brown belt. In fact, I don't really remember winning much, at brown belt, so but it's helped me. It's helped me and I'm reaching goals, and I just want to continue to do that, and I'm just going to keep working towards those goals. So jiu-jitsu is always the main thing that's helping me reach those goals, in order to keep that lifestyle change.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second, like wins and losses, because it's easy to try and like judge win. And we've already talked a little bit about like competition people against hobbyist people. And I am confident that as far as like, if you walked into any gym, everybody would know you are where you are, right? Jeremy Deskins is definitely a brown belt. If he rolled into any gym anywhere, everybody would respect that rank because I think you obviously are a brown belt. But it's no, and I've had the pleasure of competing against you, and I know I've watched you against a bunch of guys at WVGO, and so like I have no problem saying like if somebody asked me, I'd be like, yeah, he's legit. And not only is he legit, he probably beat the shit out of most of your guys. And it's interesting. It's interesting, like we had talked about a little bit before. It's interesting that people have this idea that there's kind of a gold standard, and this is what a brown belt is, and all brown belts are the same, or this is what a black belt is, and all black belts are the same, and it's just not. But when it comes to competition, and I've talked to, there's a couple things that I've talked to my guys about. Is like one, that if you're a white belt, nobody is there to see you except for your mom and your girlfriend, and nobody else cares. Nobody else cares. Nobody showed up to watch the white belt competition except for your mom and your girlfriend and your opponent's mom and his girlfriend, and that's it. There are 4 people watching that match. Maybe your coach, if he's not reffing another match or coaching another match on the other side of the thing. So nobody's really watching. And then outside of jiu-jitsu, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You can be, here's the thing is like Gordon Ryan has been on Joe Rogan's podcast and still nobody knows who he is.
I know, that's crazy.
And that's the thing that like, it's hard for us to understand when we go to competition that this isn't, in the grand scheme of life, this isn't that important, and how much importance everybody puts on it. But and I kind of got off track a little bit, because what I really want to say is that when you go to competition, if you're a white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, doesn't matter what belt you are, you're going into competition against everybody else's best white belts, purple belts, blue belts, brown belts, black belts. You're not the guys who are one day a week, or 1 day every 2 week training. Those guys don't show up. Those guys aren't going to competition. And that's the difference between like hobbyist and competitor hobbyists. So even then, the hobbyists have levels too, right? Because there are competitor hobbyists who come up, like they're there 3 or 4 times a week. They train consistently, and they are getting better, way better than guys who started before them, who come once a week, once every 2 weeks. And so it's not a good measuring stick to say, hey, I went to competition and I didn't win any matches, and I've been going to competition, I haven't won, because you're seeing the best guys out there. The worst blue belts don't compete. I don't care what anybody says, they don't. If you're a blue belt and you get your ass handed to you every day by all the white belts at your gym, I guarantee you don't go to a blue belt competition. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't deserve your blue belt. You absolutely do. Your instructor obviously thinks that you have the understanding of jiu-jitsu and the knowledge in jiu-jitsu to obtain that blue belt. But you are not a competition blue belt, because
Exactly.
if all the guys that are white belts at your gym are beating your ass, you're not a competition blue belt. And so when you go to competition, you have to understand that even if I lose here, I'm seeing the best white belts, I'm seeing the best blue belts, I'm seeing the best pro, because guys who suck don't show up, or guys who are hobbyists that only come 1 day a week and train don't show up. You're not seeing those guys. And furthermore, I've seen plenty of guys who are hobbyists who still train 4 days a week and would mop guys in competition. And those gym warriors, it's just the range is so vast. And Butch had kind of mentioned it, like you showed up with like you're a new blue belt and you show up to a blue belt division. I remember my first blue belt match in my first blue belt division, and I got destroyed. And I thought, I suck at jiu-jitsu. I went through white belt and I smashed all these guys and I did really good. And for whatever reason, God had shined down on me and smiled upon me and made me an okay white belt, and I was great at competition. And then my first blue belt competition, I didn't realize that I was really rolling with guys who were almost purple belts. I had only been training a year. I just got my blue belt, and I'm rolling against purple belts. I would almost say I got molested. It was that bad, right? And people just don't understand, like, even in one belt level, the difference between a brand new blue belt and an almost purple belt, it's huge. It's huge.
I think so too. Even the competitor, like there's different levels, to it. Like at least from my experience, and I've been involved with like grappling wise, as far as grappling goes, for 16 years, and there's just levels to it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've even grappled with some like people that are, pro fighters, that, also could use a little bit better grappling, under their belt, and I'm not like calling anybody out or anything, but it's just the truth, but even like going to competitions, even as a higher belt, like I've lost to lower belts in nogi matches, whenever I like going to nogi division, I've been submitted by, competitive purple belts and stuff like that. Heck, who knows? I may have been submitted by competitive blue belts before in nogi competition. Because a lot of times, whenever you go for like the absolutes or something, you're going against everybody, and I've even seen it with my own eyes too, like for example, whenever I was competing down in Florida, my blue belt days, I competed against this guy named he was Zach. I can't remember his last name. guy was, man, he was a beast. He actually hit me with a flying triangle. Then he actually did the absolute division there at Copa. And this is what the one that Ross Kellen holds down in Florida. Um, he actually beat everybody like in the absolute division. The black belts, he submitted 3 black belts in a row. Like this kid was phenomenal. But it just goes to show you that there are levels, and and just and reverting back to a little bit earlier about the belt, I am a brown belt, but one thing I've always had in my head too, that I've always been taught, the belt only covers 2% of your ass. You got to cover the 98% rest of it, you know. And I don't like to think that, the belt does define me either, Um, I just, to me, right now, things are actually starting to click, as long as I've been doing it, So whenever I even do get my black belt, I feel like I'm just restarting, it's like I hit the reset button, you know. And I've even had the pleasure, of Dustin coming in and helping me a lot, and I've been thankful for that, because my professor, he's in Florida and everything, but Dustin, he's also kind of taking me under his wing a little bit too, and I'm thankful for that, because I've known Dustin for a long time. We went to school together, so, and him living in Louisa, I'm thankful for that, to have somebody on that level to be able to help.
So tell Gary and I know who you're talking about, but mention who that is, because Dustin is amazing. So he needs his props as well. But go ahead. What's his full name and stuff? Just for everybody else.
Dustin Hazlett.
Yeah. So he was I think submission of the night winner on in the UFC, and definitely fight of the night winner. Been amazing for a decade at least, right? Like, I mean, literally, one of the best people to come out of our region, by meaning that the ones that we all know, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, stuff like that. I mean, amazing. And now, and Jeremy and I were actually talking about this yesterday after the tournament, similar conversation, but that it's funny how quickly people forget. Not that, he's forgetting, but like if you mention his name now to like other people that haven't watched UFC lately or not from they wouldn't know who that is. And like, it would be hilarious if they rolled with it and they're like, who the hell is this guy? Right. Because he's amazing. I mean, and I don't know what he does now. Maybe you could tell us, I guess, but he would have had an amazing triangle back in the day. And I'm sure his game's all over the place, but is that still his thing? Or
look, he's a wizard, put it that way. All right. You know what it is? It's so crazy because I'll be, he's been training regularly again here lately. So it's just becoming even tougher as well, because now he's knocking the rust off and everything. But even whenever he was out for a little bit, I'm in here. I literally teach 14 classes a week, mind you. Okay, but I'm also grappling with my students too. And I even do 2-a-days, and then he comes in after like not even training for 2 months and then just chokes me, like in like a minute or two, and I'm like, what the heck, man, but he's just got a lot of knowledge, and I've been thankful to have, for him to be coming in and everything. But just having the friendship. I've known Dustin, since middle school. We went to school together, so it was just, and we didn't hang out or anything in school, but we were on the same football team and everything. But you know how school is, cliques. Yeah. But we still talk to each other here and there. But we wasn't like best friends or anything. But later on, down the road, we started interacting with each other again. And then, whenever I moved back and everything, he lives in the same hometown I live in still. And he comes and he trains. We give him a place to come in and spread his knowledge and to be able to train and work his jiu-jitsu, because he's got such he's got such a great skill set, man. Even he knows he don't want it to go away, and that's why he's been back at it a lot, and for me, I'm thankful for that, because he gives us a lot of knowledge, um, and
But
yeah, he is, he's I think he does deserve to be acknowledged at least, because the people were so quick to forget, even like some of the legends of the sport today, like Don Fry and all them guys.
Yep.
These guys paved the way. They freaking bled in there. For y'all to see this and for you to have a sport that you love, or and at least to give you something that even if you don't do it to compete at, something that you can go in and train as a martial art, that can help you with a way out, stress or anything like that. Um, but still, Dustin, he deserves, I think he does deserve the credit, and I think people are quick to forget about, people who go out there and put literally their life on the line, because that's what they do. I don't care. Anything can happen, whenever you're in the ring, whether you're boxing, whether you're doing an MMA match, or kickboxing match. I mean, one shot, to the head can be done for,
yeah,
I think he
Well,
does
and I
deserve
think I think a big part of it is just athletics in general and sports in general has a short memory, right? And the reason is because it's constantly going. It doesn't stop. And it's easy to forget that Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. It's easy to forget that Bo Jackson was Bo Jackson, or that Barry Sanders was Barry Sanders. When you get to watch every day, every weekend, if you're watching football, Derrick Henry is a beast right now. Obviously he's injured, but like for the last 3 seasons, he's been pretty good. And it's easy to make that argument like he's the greatest there is because it's what I'm seeing right now. But it's easy. It's also as easy as it is to say that, it's also easy to forget what we've already seen. And it shouldn't be that way. You would think, they're used to. I don't know. Maybe this is a societal thing. Not to get too off on a tangent, but it used to be like the elders, like we used to appreciate the elders a little bit more. And it used to be like that's where all of our knowledge was, and we've kind of lost that a little bit. Like we don't really appreciate what happened before us, or how hard we had to work to get to where we're going, or how hard they had to work to get to where we're at. And so it's interesting that guys like Dustin, or guys like in any sport, the ones that have already laid the track, that they get it's not appreciated. Yeah, the sport's different now, and maybe that there wouldn't be the outcome that they would have now, but there wouldn't be what there is now if it wasn't for them. And it's easily forgotten, and that's kind of sad,
but I think it's good for all of us to bring it up, or like instead of, which obviously you're not, but that's what I've had the same thought too. Like instead of, I guess, complaining about it, right? Because that's not going to do any good. Is just that's our job, is to bring, like in conversations like this, to bring things up and bring people up and let people know, like it's okay that you don't know. Like if you just got into the sport now and now you're trying to catch up, right? You're not going to probably go back and watch all the old fights, and so it's not a disrespectful thing, right? But it's, I think in a weird way, it's our job to kind of remind everybody, hey man, like this guy was a legend, this guy did this guy did that, and then I'm trying to educate people also, and let them know. And the same thing, I mean, just like you said, Jeremy, I mean, we're after the tournament, we always go eat Mexican and have some drinks and do some stuff, and we're there, and I was telling people about the Don Fry fight in Pride, where he held that other guy's back of his head as basically a hockey fight, right?
Oh,
And
legend.
nobody
That's a legend fight.
yeah, and like half the table didn't even know about it. And I'm like, well, you need to go, because it started off like, I don't remember. I said something about Don Fry. Well, I was talking about Don Fry on Joe Rogan. I said, man, it was a pretty good interview. And as to my friend, because my friend Ron did a lot of similar things. He's a horse farrier and rode some bulls. And Don Fry did all these things too. And I was just joking with him. I was like, literally, you're the same person, except he was a firefighter and you weren't. And you're a Marine, a sniper. Is like, but you're close enough, right? We're joking. And then some other people are like, well, who's Don Fry? And I'm like, you don't know Don Fry? Like, so then it caused us to kind of go off into, all about that. But yeah, and same thing. And since I'm live on Instagram, I'm getting some comments about Dustin. I wanted to bring them up before we move on too, because I do think it's important. But Colin from Ground Zero Morgantown mentioned that his Dustin's Uchimata, which was the submission of the night, was one of the greatest arm bars in the history of the UFC, which I agree, because I had never seen that setup before either, and a lot of people are talking about it. It was amazing. But one thing I wanted to mention too, since you brought that up, and most of us know that, but a lot of us might not know of the one fight that he had where he fought Helson Gracie's son, right, in Columbus on one of the Arnold things. And that was on pay-per-view, I think. I know because I watched it somewhere, but
Hey.
He beat him, I believe.
He did, and I'm going to tell you now. I kind of tell you, I narrowly escaped getting into a fight with Holland Gracie because of this. I'll let you guys explain this. We'll talk about that in a second. But I narrowly escaped because I didn't go to dinner. It was one of the rare occasions that I didn't go to dinner, and I think it saved me getting my ass beat. But I'll let you guys talk about the fight first.
Well, you sound more interested, but the fight was amazing. Well, I'll hurry my part up. And Colin corrected me too. That's Fry versus Takayama. So I'm glad he's on here because he's helping my brain damage. But yeah, so that fight was, so Dustin was, this is my memory too. And it's funny thing about, like, I can remember things from long ago, but not recently. But anyway, I don't think anybody knew who Dustin was. And just for give credit, I'm pretty sure that's when Dustin Ware was kind of managing people. I think Dustin Ware helped give him that fight, because obviously he knew that organization was running some stuff down there. But yeah, so you got on that card. Was it, because I remember I can't remember his name right now, but anyway, like there's a bunch of local kind of guys that fought in the name of the Gracies, almost Gracies versus other people kind of deal. And there's a guy named Mike that I think his name's Mike, owned 4 seasons in Kentucky. Jeremy, you may know, but he fought too. And but anyway, we'll get back on this. I just remember that they Dustin and Helson's son, and I don't know his name. Was that who you're talking about, Gary? Is that the same name or is it different? Holland. Okay, so they had, Dustin was unknown, right? That was a big opportunity for him. Nobody really thought he was do good, because typically, let's be honest, like if Helson was probably putting that show on or had something to do with that show, you're going to usually find people that you think you can beat. It's not because they think they're not tough, but that's what you do, right? Like it's to showcase your skills, and typically you want the hometown hero to win, right? Whatever. So I'm sure he wasn't brought in, and they probably didn't respect his jiu-jitsu. And I'm quite honestly, I don't think, I didn't train with him at the time. So like people probably, he was a sleeper on people. Next thing you know, I mean, he had him in a triangle. Dustin had him in a triangle. They traded some toe holds back and forth where I'm pretty sure probably both their feet popped. A lot of things like where it was equal. And maybe you could say Dustin got the better of him. I don't know if did it end in a draw? Am I correct?
Sure.
I believe Dustin won the match. I believe it was. I believe he got the decision.
Okay.
Well, I would say it was close enough. It was close enough that I think it could arguably go either way.
Yeah. Well, that's even
my opinion.
Even more shock. I mean, obviously I don't remember this up, but it's even more shocking considering, like I said, Helson probably had something to do with that event, because that's when Helson was running the grappling part of the Arnolds too, I'd assume. So the fact that they would give the decision was also very admirable for those guys, right? And now, before I let you get your story, now, do you guys know, was that Holland's first and only fight, or did he have more fights? Anybody know?
Not sure. I never kept up with him, honestly.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm just gonna Google it right now. I'll find out.
That's a good job. This was Joe Rogan. We'd say, Jamie, pull it up, right? But no, but the whole thing is amazing to me, right? Because that's when, Gracies are known for the challenge fights, right? And that was the thing. That's why I tuned in. It was like watching the Gracie challenge fights, right? Because we're like, all right, they're taking on everybody. Let's see how this goes. It's amazing. And then that fight really, like I said, was like a shocker, because you're like, oh my God, plus he's from West Virginia, like, which is what I said. I know he's from Kentucky, but I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Good for him. And we're really excited. And nowadays, I bet you most people don't remember those fights or didn't see them because it was pretty obscure, right? Like that whole event. But it was awesome. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to take and go back and watch that. I am.
Yeah, but you probably have to have a VCR unless you can find it somewhere. I don't know if it'd be online somewhere or, it probably is.
I bet it is. It is.
That was Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say now, and this goes back to what we was talking about before, right? That there's a difference between competition people and people who are hobbyists, and you never like the guys who show up to compete are the best guys who show up to compete. The you know, separating the wheat from the chaff, right? Like
Yeah.
like the wheat shows up to compete. Now Holland is 0-3 as an MMA as his professional career in MMA is 0-3. And his first loss was to Dustin. He had 2 other matches. He got KO'd. I don't know if that was a KO or a TKO, and it was stopped. And then there was a decision that he lost. He lost the split decision to Dustin. And like I said, that match was close enough. I remember I've watched it a couple times, and I remember that it was good enough that like I think you could arguably say that it could have went either way. I know that Holland never really ate any like heavy punches or shots or anything like that. And there was nothing that was like, oh my God, this is a runaway on either side, right? There was no time that you were like, man, this is obviously one-sided match. So there is that. And I also before I tell this story, I want to say that everybody knows that I came from Helson Gracie School originally, and I loved every minute that I've ever spent with Helson. I think he's a great guy, and he's a beautiful human being. Everyone that I've ever trained with Helson, including I went to a Holland seminar, and Holland was amazing. I loved his seminar. So I want to get that out of the way first and say that
I don't know him. I don't know them.
Nothing but respect for those guys. Those guys are amazing. They always have been amazing to me. Now, how would I have gotten my ass kicked by Holland? This is how. I didn't after the seminar, and not unlike when you go to, Butch, we've gone to seminars, and then afterwards, because I'm close to Butch, I'm lucky enough to go out to dinner or something like that. And I've managed to hang out with a lot of people. This night when Holland taught his seminar, which was one of the best seminars that I've ever been to. I want to say that right now. It's like, nice. I learned a shit ton of stuff. I'm not throwing any shade. He's great, right? Maybe I'm just trying to preserve life here, and I don't want to get beat up later on because he's going to hear this.
That's probably a good idea. Don't worry.
Yeah, but I don't know anybody, because I still have a lot of friends who train at Helson, right? So I don't want them to think that this is anything like, I'm trying to jump. But
absolutely.
There was a seminar that Dustin was a part of. And this was post the match with Holland, maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe as much as 6 years after Holland had that match with Dustin. And I had a bunch of friends who went down to that seminar, and they trained at that seminar. I wasn't able to go to that seminar, but Dustin was there, and I believe there were like 4 or 5 other black belts. And in Southeast Ohio, there were no black belts at the time. Right. And if you wanted to train with a black belt, you had to either drive to Columbus or to Charleston, or like it was a drive. It was at least an hour and a half drive to find a black belt. And if you wanted to do a seminar or something, it was probably going to be longer than that. So the fact that there was something going on that was in Parkersburg, I think they did it in Parkersburg at the time, where I don't believe that there were any black belts at the time in Parkersburg. I could be wrong, but I don't believe at the time there were any black belts in Parkersburg. But there were like 4 or 5 black belts teaching a seminar. I had a whole bunch of friends go down there to it. And then shortly after that was the Holland seminar. We all went to the Holland seminar, and then everybody at the academy that I went out, they went out and they went to dinner with Holland. I went home. At the dinner, it was brought up that they had went to the seminar with Dustin, and that became an issue. And because of that, they said, hey, you can't be training with him, and he's the outsider, he's my opponent, and you can't be doing, I can't believe you would go and train with him. If you want a seminar, then you come to me. The thing is we don't have black belts. Holland, as much as I respect you, you live in San Diego, San Francisco. You're not here, right? And your dad lives in Hawaii or Brazil. He doesn't live here. He comes around once a year. So when it was free seminar, when a free seminar with 3 or 4 black belts shows up, of course, guys who are serious about jiu-jitsu and want to learn more about jiu-jitsu are going to go to that seminar. And so my guys did. Well, it pissed Holland off, and maybe rightfully so. I don't know. I'm not here to say he's wrong or right, but I know that myself I'm not very good at shutting up about it. And I probably would have said something to the extent that, well, when I go to a seminar, it's my money, so you're my employee, and I'll pay whoever the hell I want. And I probably would have got my ass beat. So that is the story of how I didn't get my ass beat by Holland Gracie, because I'm sure he would have beat the shit out of me.
Well, and just so I think that I would think that goes back. So I had similar a situation with Hoist, and I used to be under Hoist Gracie, right? And same thing, right? I still love Hoist to this day. I haven't talked to him since I was a purple belt in 2004. I'm sure that we're fine. We left on really good terms. Everything was good. It was actually just exactly what Gary said. I was a Hoist Gracie affiliate, but I never got to see him, and he was getting more and more popular, meaning he was taking on more academies. I think he had 300 at some point internationally, right? So there would be some years I didn't see him at all, and they would send in Rodrigo, which is still awesome, or somebody else, and then it was just kind of odd. So it was the same thing. Like a couple of times I went to seminars, and maybe they would see on social media or hear from the grapevine that I was somewhere, and they would actually question me about, why are you training with that guy? And I said, well, because, and I told him, I actually did kind of like you, Gary. Now, it was probably through the safety of a telephone or something, right? It wasn't like we were safe, face to face, but I said, it's the same. Like, I don't have an opportunity to train with very many black belts. So if they come around, I'm going to do it. The cool thing was they accepted that answer actually without too much, I think we talked a little bit back and forth, but they were pretty cool about it. Like, and I think it was because it was a very matter of fact. I was like, it's no offense, I love you guys, but I can't ever see you. And they said, well, you could travel. I was like, well, yeah, I could 6 hours. Like, man, I'm not going to, I don't have that time. And, and I was like, I get it. Yeah, I could do a lot of things, and you could do a lot of things. Right. And so in the end, they actually were pretty cool with it. He was like, no, I get it. And I was like, so do I have permission? And I think at first Hoist said, well, our network is what they call it, it has tons of black belts, why don't you get them in? And so again, I can and I will. Well, that's another step. But if one comes through town, I would still like to train with them or around. And ultimately they're cool. That's like, I'm not going to jump ship. It's not a matter of that, right? Now, sadly I did, but I didn't jump ship for something wrong. It was like, I just like sat one day and I was thinking of all that, because it was like, at the time, like $150 a month for affiliation fees, right? And I just I didn't have any money, and that's back when I was young and I didn't really run the gym correctly. I didn't have, most of my members weren't paying half the time, and I had no money. And so I was looking for the value of the money, even though I love them. But I'm just thinking, well, if I'm not seeing anybody and I'm technically training myself, which I was, right? I'm like, why? Like, I can't pay this money. It doesn't mean I don't like it. And I was scared to death. That's back when I think Hoist and Henzo and some other people had just went to Spain and beat somebody up. Like, that, I don't know if you guys remember that story, but it was like some guy, short version of the story. Some guy went into a Hobson seminar in Spain, I think it was, or somewhere. And he was an MMA fighter, and he did the Gracie challenge, but it was like, we didn't even know the Gracie challenge was still going on, and nobody, like regular people didn't even know who Hobson was, right? So it's kind of an ambush in a way. The Gracies didn't like it, and Hobson accepted the fight. It went to a draw, but they're like, why did you fight him? You could have came and fought us. And so they surprised him in Spain. I guess he was a bouncer, and it may not be Spain, but it's somewhere in Europe. And apparently the story was he kicked his ass. I think they locked him in the place, and all of them beat the shit out of this guy and
Holy
served
crap.
him. Yeah. And then also there was that, the term creonche or cretin, whatever you say it, was just like
Creonche.
Yeah, or stuff like that.
Yeah, so it means you're a traitor. So this is all going on, and I'm like, this is going to be the most awkward conversation ever. But Hoist was very gracious, because the way, I think the thing is about all this stuff is just how you communicate it too, right? And where I was like, look, I love you to death. If without you, I wouldn't do jujitsu, and I think everybody's the same. Like, if I'm not going to train with you, then I just can't keep paying this money. I just don't have it. And then, of course, they still tried. They were like, well, don't you think, when people go pick a gym, they want to pick the Hoist Gracie gym? And I said, well, no, there's only like 2 gyms in West Virginia. So like, it's not like there's a million in Charleston, and they're like, well, I'm going to pick this one. It's like, I am the only gym. So I was like, it was like a weird thing. So it worked the way it did. But anyway, I think my point from the beginning was, it's just like, I think that's the way they thought. And I know there's probably some value. I know what they're saying, right? Is that like it's our team, and it was a different, like they were very hardcore because Creonches or whatever that they used to go and kick your ass. Like people don't understand this, but in the
Just for cross
90s,
training.
yeah, just in the 90s, like you didn't do that. Like
No, no.
yeah, there were still people, what do they call dojo storming and stuff, like showing up and beat people's ass for exactly that. Like if you, just like you said, if you cross train, I was another place and somebody heard one of these crazy Brazilians, they come beat your ass. And I would venture to say that America changed that, right? That's probably very, very strict and very hardcore in Brazil, but Americans are different, right? Like, and they've complained about it too. Not just that, they complain about like, we think we train hard, but in Brazil, they train with like no air condition and 100-degree weather. And then they get really, probably tortured.
Sounds like Florida.
But I would
Exactly.
listen, but here's the thing. I would say, yeah, that's fine. You can say that you trained without any air conditioning and da da da. And I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm sure they did. But look at the guys at Daisy Fresh. They were sleeping.
God.
Like you can't tell me that anybody trains any harder than those guys in worse condition than those guys. Just watch a couple episodes of Daisy Fresh and tell me that anybody does it like harder than those guys do, because those guys are sleeping on the mats that they roll on. They wake up, they roll, they share gis. They don't even have, like, a lot of them don't have any money for like spare gis or whatever, and they share the gi. It's like, hey, you're an A2, cool, I'm an A2 too. It just grab a gi and let's roll. And nobody, they don't have air conditioning, they barely have a fan, they don't have anywhere to do laundry. When they go to do laundry, they run back and forth to the bathroom, hit the soap dispenser until they get enough soap, and then they throw it on top of their clothes to wash their clothes. So nobody's training harder than those guys. And it's not I'm not saying that the guys in Brazil aren't training that hard. I'm sure they are. But what I am saying is that the culture in America is, hey, we can fight our asses off and we can go and Jeremy, me and you have had a competition. I'm telling you now that I have no problem going out to have a beer with you afterwards.
Absolutely.
If we have a match tomorrow and you beat my ass, we have a match tomorrow and I beat your ass, I want you to know that the offer is, hey, that was a match, man. That's not life. Neither one of us are like rolling in the dough because of jiu-jitsu. One day I hope, maybe, if I'm lucky, but like,
Yeah, well,
it's a shared experience.
I would feel this, and likewise, and we've had a match, and guess what? We became friends, even though we were already friends really before it, but it even brought us together even more. That's the way I look at it. And that's to me, that is what I love about jiu-jitsu. And yeah, my professor, Michael Gary, he's down in Florida, but he does believe in cross training. And I believe in cross training too. And I also believe in loyalty, and, just because I'm cross training, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go elsewhere, because, I'm loyal to, my team also, my professor and stuff like that. But I still crave knowledge. I do, because it's growing always, And just like you said, with the Daisy Fresh guys, they're freaking killing it. They are. And the proof's in the pudding, that like they're out here, beating everybody, and, the way they're training right now, that's why they're beating everybody. It's who wants it more.
Yeah. Well, just think about how much you have to dedicate yourself to something to say, I'm going to forego, because really they're foregoing relationships with women. They're foregoing comfort of having an actual apartment. They're foregoing the comfort of having a steady income. They're foregoing to give all of that up to try and be the best at something that nobody cares about.
Exactly.
And this is the hard thing to understand, because as jiu-jitsu guys, we all care about jiu-jitsu, right? But in the grand scheme of things in the United States, nobody gives two shits about jiu-jitsu. Nobody cares about this stuff but us. We are a select few people who really care. Now, listen, there are a lot of people who listen to Joe Rogan, and maybe a few of our friends who listen to this, and I'm going to go give jiu-jitsu a try. But in honest, if we're being honest, nobody cares about jiu-jitsu. Nobody even thinks about jiu-jitsu. Right? If you go out on the street and ask 50 people, 100 people today, hey, well, if I asked you how to demonstrate an armbar, could you do it? Nobody could. Of 100, you get 0 out of 100, right?
Or they would tell you it's karate.
Yeah, maybe you get 1 out of 1,000. And that's the thing, is like, those guys are willing to give up everything that is comfortable in life to do something that nobody knows anything about. And that is hard for people to understand. That is hard for people to understand.
I was on a Zoom meeting sometime this week, couple times, but it's for my job, my real job. But there's people from Ireland and England and Europe and all these crazy places and all over the United States on this meeting. It's my company. But if I don't change this Zoom meeting from whatever it is now, like whatever my profile is now to my work thing. So my background was basically my gym logo, which says Butch, Hiles, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and stuff. And I didn't have the thing on mute. I was doing something else. I think we weren't quite on the call yet. I think somebody asked me a question like, what's that logo mean? But I just ignored it because I was doing other stuff. And as long as I'm not on there, they don't know if I'm on there or not. I was like, I'm not going to talk to them right now. But anyway, so they kept talking about me, not knowing if I was there. And it was funny because this girl from she had like an English sounding accent. She goes, I don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, but what I do know is it's like kind of like a cult. Like anybody I've ever talked to, that's all they talk about. And so I almost jumped in on that one because I thought it was funny. Like I didn't think but I kept laughing. And like a million times I wanted to say something. I never did, but at least I get to mention it now. It was funny. That's a good comment because I see the memes about, and I was a CrossFitter at one time, right? Like it was like, how do you know if somebody does CrossFit? And they're like, just wait, they'll tell you. And I was that guy too. I remember because when I didn't do CrossFit, all my friends did CrossFit and I'd be at dinners with them and that's all they talk about. And I'd get really mad because I was injured and couldn't do it. And I'd be like, man, you guys need to talk about something else, right? And they couldn't. That's all they had to talk about was their darn times and Fran and Grace and all these things. And I had to get new friends. I don't do CrossFit anymore. So and that was literally the thing. I was like, I can't go out with you if that's all you're going to talk about, And it's funny because I was kind of similar with jiu-jitsu for a while. I was like, this is what I do all day. I don't want to talk about it at night, which ironically, that's what Gary and I do every Sunday now is talk about jiu-jitsu or something or whatever. And half the time at dinner, but it's a little different. It's like, it's not my, it's not my focus of thing. Like I felt like they were, but I'm also probably trying to be biased, right? Maybe it is. Maybe every time we're out, my wife's like, God, that's all they talk about, these stupid people. And she thinks she's dumb. Like she doesn't think it's dumb. She likes it. I mean, our kids do give it. She makes fun of me a lot. She must be homophobic or something. She says it's a very gay sport. So, and she's not homophobic either, but it's like, that's probably, well, I know it is. It's just to rip on me, to bring me back down to earth. He's like, you think you're so tough? Well, you let guys sit on your face. I don't think that's tough at all. I'm like, okay. Yeah, point taken, right?
We try not to let them sit on our face if we can help it.
And it is funny to make fun of. That was the other day when George Euler was at our gym. He was teaching a class on some chokes and Zagalo chokes, like one of his favorites, right? But he was going north-south, so he's literally teabagging Wes Shawver the whole time. So I was just making jokes about it mostly. And then Wes's soon-to-be wife walked in to do something, and I said, hey, it's perfect timing, your husband's getting teabagged. Like, and they're all like, oh, what's that? You just got to embrace it, right? It's you're right. It's not the one thing we love. It's like, just keep your eyes closed, don't try it. Luckily I can't smell. I don't know how you guys are, but keep your eyes closed and don't smell.
The tea bag, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the best. I try to make it less, I still call it tea bag, but I call it the Brazilian tea bag. That way it doesn't sound nearly as bad.
You said that. I think it makes it sound worse. Not only are you being teabagged, but maybe you're getting stabbed as well. I don't know.
Who knows, right? I mean,
God.
It's the special tea bag. Well, so Jeremy, when you said that you've been doing for 16 years, that 16 years with grappling or 16 years, how long you've been doing martial arts now?
16 years martial arts. I did freestyle kickboxing. I was doing it for about a year, and like like I said, Angelo, they brought Angelo in to it was kind of my kickboxing teacher at the time, Ruel D'Souza, had Angelo come in to teach MMA classes also, because Ruel, he didn't do MMA and stuff like that, but he was teaching freestyle kickboxing. So Angelo came in and he started teaching, some grappling holds and stuff like that. This was 2005, 2006. Spring Hill, Hernando County, Florida is where it's at, but Spring Hill, Florida is the where I really started training with grappling and stuff like that. So he was teaching us how to grapple. He had opened a place himself too called Revelation MMA. It was funny because it was literally behind the popular titty bar down in Florida, which there's tons of down there, by the way. But then, it was still hard to find, legit jujitsu. Like you had to drive down to Tampa at the time, for like Gracie Network, because Rob Kahn and all them guys down there,
Yeah, I was
Tampa
with
area.
Rob when he got his black belt. Actually, it was 2004.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Team Rock in North Carolina was a thing. That's when I got my purple. He got his black, but yeah, you're right, and that's like I think at that time too. Well, I know he was because I did some stuff with it, but Shaquille O'Neal was training down there with them. I don't know if it was in Tampa or not, but he was training with a couple Hoist Gracie people. I don't know if he stuck with them for his whole career. It's weird because like we all know he does jujitsu, but I don't know much like who he trains with. I knew he did train with Hoist because he was at a couple of seminars, and I knew who he trained with, but I don't know if he stuck with him. And I don't know, is he a brown belt or a black belt? I know it's kind of off.
I think he's a
thought I
brown
heard
belt
him
now. I wouldn't swear to it, but I
Yeah.
think he's a brown belt now.
I thought I heard something to that extent too. I thought I heard he was a brown belt as well.
Well, yeah, then there's videos of him like with Forrest Griffin, and he makes Forrest Griffin look like a little tiny person. And
dude, I know.
yeah, and that's and he does well. It's not, I mean, a lot of it really is because he's like, if he died and somebody dug his bones up, they would think that the world was populated by rare human giant people, right? He's just not a normal person, right? Like it's weird, right? And that's what I remember in 2004 is that if he grabbed you, you couldn't get your hand out, or your like if you grabbed around your wrist, because his hand like wraps around your wrist 3 more times, right? Like
That's insane.
Yeah, so you're not going to find that grip where the thumb is and come out, it's and that's what everybody was talking about, because I think he had just started, and they're like, dude, there's nothing you can do. Like, I there some guy said, he goes, I put him in lockdown, but I don't do anything. I just hold him there so I don't get killed, and but yeah, so anyway, yeah, not sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, it was awesome because Rob was one of the big guys down there, and a couple other guys, and isn't and they might be in Miami. Is that Valente? Is that Gui Valente and Pedro Valente? They're big. I mean, they have like 400 some students, I think. It's
I feel
crazy.
like I've heard that the Valente brothers, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that a lot down there. You got Hops and Mora down there too. And you got a lot of affiliates, a Hops and Mora affiliate down there. Nova Uniao also, but I think it's Upper Belt Academy now is what they're going under. It could be both. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the time, like whenever I first got started, man, I mean, you had to travel, like you all were talking about, you'd have to travel down to Tampa, or even to like Brandon area to like Fabio Navas, and stuff like that. Yeah, like at the time I was, training Nogi, it was strictly Nogi. I didn't start training in the gi till I started doing a little training whenever I was training at USA Muay Thai under Stefan Butenbick. They would go down to Fabio Navas. They would for jiu-jitsu, and I would go down there here and there and train, and that's where I got introduced to the gi. That was there, and even whenever I moved back to Kentucky. I actually moved back to Kentucky around 2011. I did, and it's funny because I was a white belt, and I was still, training, but we were training here in Louisa at this little fitness place. And Dustin would come in every once in a while, but Jarvis, I think he was actually training under you at the time, Butch. He was a blue belt at the time. He came down and brought his gi and was showing some gi stuff too, and I only had some mild gi training at the time from Fabio Navas and stuff. And but honestly, it made me even grow my love for the gi though. Um, instead of just MMA style stuff, no gi stuff, so that's where I really started I really started loving more grappling even more whenever I got introduced to the gi. I started loving it more than striking when I got introduced to grappling. But I started loving it even more whenever I started getting introduced to the gi. I did.
Yeah, and I think because we've had a couple talks about that now. Now, would you agree that's especially as you get older, right? It slows the game down a little bit, but I don't know if like that's definitely part of the thing now. I do like that it's not like you're scrambling all over the place all the time, right? You can slow it down a little bit, but I think that to me it's always been a thing where there's so many nuances, right? You can change a grip an inch and the whole game changes, right? And you have to watch for random chokes and weird stuff. And like I've never played with worm guard, but that's another thing, right? There's just so many things you can do, which is like, I guess in a way, like for my jiu-jitsu, I'm more intellectual. I like the pursuit of the thought process and the chess game behind it. Like, cause I really feel like if I were to ever get mad, which is not often, but it's not a mad because somebody beat me. It's like a mad that I was outsmarted, right? Like we were in a game of intellectual chess and I didn't see that setup or I got led down a weird path, right? And then you're like, God, and it's not like slapping the mat kind of dorky mad. It's inside my head. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I did that, right? Like,
Yeah.
or I saw that too late, or and that's the cool thing. It doesn't mean I don't like no-gi. It's just like I used to have a thing a long time ago, and it's not necessarily true now, but I would just say like it would be like if I could kickbox and I said I only want to box, right? So I took a bunch of the tools away, but it like that's what I used to say, but I don't really mean that like now. I don't think that's a great analogy anymore, right? Because I would say, look, I want all the tools. I want to be able to kick and punch and knee and elbow. And that's what I think the gi is now. No gi has become that now. That's back when we used to just take the gi off and then there wasn't those nuances that there are now, right? Where you're attacking the legs and it's a different thing, right? So that all being said, I don't think that's the greatest analogy now. I just do still think intellectually I like what the gi brings to me, right? Those grips and those things. And I get for some other people that's that same intellectual pursuit that I like, they hate it because it's annoying, right? Like they're like, I don't like people touching my lapels and holding my sleeves and doing that. It's annoying. And yeah, I get it, right? But that's the challenge to me. It is annoying. So I like to try to figure out how to get out or how to negate that. Or like I said, you run into a guy like Shaq that you can't break his grip. Well, that's weird. Like, right. So now I got to figure that one out, or something like that. So
Wrist locking,
yes.
maybe. I don't know. I'm just
Well, I was actually kind of talking about the gi versus no gi the other day with a couple friends and some guys down here, and something I had come up with. Like, the more I thought, actually came home and was thinking about like, why do I like gi so much more? Because I do, and a big part of it, as Butch was saying, we've talked about it, where like I think it does slow the game down, and I get to take more breaks in the gi than I do not, in no gi. But also, like, even when I was early on in jiu-jitsu, I liked the gi a little bit more. And the more I thought about it, it's like, it's kind of like having a weapon. And like the whole idea of don't show up to a knife fight, or don't show up to a gunfight with a knife. Like, don't show up to a fist fight without a gi. Because I want a weapon. You know, like I
I'm gonna
want
use
to
my
have.
lapel to choke you.
Yeah, and if I can't use your clothing against you, I can use my clothing against you. It's
Exactly.
just I like the fact, and Butch kind of was saying it too, is like there are more options. You know, I don't. It's not just arm bar, triangle, rear naked choke anymore, or now you can add in leg locks, right? But it's not just those things. I also have cross chokes. I can use that grip to take the back. I can use that grip to sweep. I can use that grip to worm guard. But all of these things, like, and I'm not trying to go street versus, no, or street versus sport or anything like that. I like the idea of having extra options, you
Yeah.
know? And so for me, that's what it is. Just like the variables are so much more in the gi than they are no gi. So and I kind of like that. And if competition was a little more open, and I would wager to bet that Butch would be one of the places that you could, hey, we can open this up and have fun. But if competition was a little more open to reaping the knee in the gi, I think you could see a lot more interesting jiu-jitsu in the gi, and we could find out what works when people are wearing clothes and not in their underwear.
Yeah.
And I actually think they just in IBJJF, I actually think they just did change the rule set, if I'm not mistaken, to where you are allowed to reap the knee now, if I'm not
But I
mistaken.
think that's only no gi. Is that in gi too? Are you allowed to reap the knee?
I
It's
think
only
you
no
might
gi,
be.
and it's
Is
only
it
no
no
gi.
only?
Yeah, and in advanced, right? Like, because I think
Okay.
all
I
of us
didn't. I
were
didn't get a
excited.
chance to reap the knee at Pans, so.
Yeah. No, but you're right. And yeah. And also, if we're going to go back to what we were talking about earlier too, I think for me, it's part of it. It's funny because I've come full circle, is meaning that I was like so anti-traditional for a while, right? Meaning that I was like, I'm not, gonna bow and stuff we've talked about before. It's just not real traditional. I'm like, you're not going to call me something. I don't call anybody students. I'm your friend and blah blah blah. But as time went by, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. I almost feel like I now want to give homage to the guys that started jiu-jitsu, and that's partly I want to wear the gi, and that's where jiu-jitsu came from, and I want to honor those people in a certain way, because though without that there'd be no me. So like if I'm like if I'm not honoring that in a certain way, plus I'm honoring the belt, what I mean? Like it means something, because I used to be one of those guys too. I think we all were like hardcore when we first started. I was like, I'm not worried about belts, and I wasn't. And my goal was, I'm gonna try to be the best guy in whatever room I'm in, and then the belts will come, right? Like, and they did. It kind of worked out. But then again, like I said, I've come full circle. Now it's like I achieved that thing. And so now I do respect the belt more, right? But I respect in a different thing. I'm not like, I don't want to be like, hey, because half the time I don't wear my belt in the gym, and I should, right? That's part of my anti-tradition thing, right? I just don't, because I'm trying not to be like, look, I've got this on, I'm better than you, right? I'm anti everything, But the thing is, I'm like, and I made this post the other day on social media. It really truly means something. Like when I say I didn't care about the belts, it's not necessarily true, right? Because I do. It meant the world to me, like when you get that. But what it did mean, it still doesn't mean like that little piece that I'm putting on my thing. It doesn't really mean anything. It goes to what you said with the 2% of your ass. It's same. But what it means something is what happened, the journey and the moments and the emotion.
Yes.
And some of the greatest moments of my life were when I either received belts surprisingly, or some kind of thing at a seminar, just something about the belt, getting one, and now I'm lucky enough to give them, and those have been some of the greatest moments. Like, I'm not a very emotional person, and I've probably become closest to having tears giving men pieces of fabric. You know what I'm saying? Like, I swear, so hard to where I've got a speech in my head, and I don't write these things out. I know I'm going to give Gary a belt, right? And I've got this, here's what I want to say. And then when it's time to say it, I don't say it, because I know if I keep talking, I'm going to cry. so I'm like, I can't do that.
So shut up and take your belt.
Yeah, I'm just like, you
There it is.
Yeah. And I wish, maybe I wish I didn't care about that as much. And maybe as I'm getting older, one day I'll just be up there crying for no reason, because it's crying for the right thing. I mean, it's just because, and what I guess strikes me is that seeing the look of surprise on their face, right? Knowing what it means to me, because the same thing, how hard they worked in the journey. And then it means something to them that their friend sees that, right? And that means a lot. Then another thing it gets me a lot lately, because all my friends are older, is that especially if their wives are there ready, and then seeing their wives and family know that means so much to their husband or their father. And then if I just catch a glimpse, like right now, I feel like sad, like what I'm saying, but like you catch a glimpse of that and it almost makes you want to cry. I'm just like, man, this shit's hard. So like, that's what I say, come 180 from when I was like, I don't care about that. Like there was a time, I was just putting in the work. But now I want to give homage and respect to those guys, and it comes from the gi, and I want to be able to make people's lives better, right? Meaning that moment means something. So unfortunately, sometimes if you're not training that way, right? If you're just doing MMA or no gi and you're getting great, you're never going to have those moments. Like you'll have your wins in the matches and tournaments. I'm telling you, there's just nothing like celebrating with your teammates and your coaches and your family, and then going out to dinner and having some drinks after the whole weekend, and then getting on social media, and then them making a big emotional post of what it means to them, and all their friends. And then their friends are equally as happy. It's like, there is something special about that. And if I feel bad for the guys that don't understand that, right? I was one of them, right? I get it now. So that's what my point is. Like, that's why now I almost feel that urge to be more traditional, because there is a lot of respect and stuff that we're lucky enough to be part of all that, right? Jiu-Jitsu is amazing, right? And
Absolutely. I love jiu-jitsu. I do. I like how it brings people together, and yeah, I know sometimes, it also, people can, build those rivalries and, be hardcore about it. But for the most part, everything that you said, is spot on, really.
yeah, and I want to like a couple things real quick, because I got this Instagram thing up here. I want to say, like Colin said, he just wanted he's our looker up, and he said, and now BJJF only no gis reaping, so we're right. And brown and black adult divisions, he thinks that you can also do it, which would make sense. But then also, Clay, I just want to mention this, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but he said gi is hard to sell for the casual fan who want to watch a BJJ. You're 100% right, Clay, right? But we're not ever going to sell to there's never a casual fan that wants to watch jiu-jitsu. You could, I can argue, you're right. Like maybe Gordon Ryan and them would get some people excited. You casual fans, grappling is just never going to be that thing. Cause it's just like I just said earlier, where my wife makes fun of us for sitting on each other's faces, and even a triangle. She's a casual fan who's married to a black belt who has a gym since 2009. She still don't care. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
she's happy.
and I would, anyone who's going to make that argument, and this is what I'm going to say, and maybe it'll piss people off. I don't know if it will or not, but show me the viewer adulation for judo, which has been around a lot longer than jiu-jitsu. Show me the viewer adulation for taekwondo. Show me where people are rallying to even see collegiate wrestling. Now, it's not to say that there aren't schools, right? D1 schools, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, that have a huge following. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but it is not universal. And it is because of the same reasons that I believe that jiu-jitsu will never be universal, is because even in its best form, it is too hard for people to understand enough casually to enjoy it. Where basketball, basketball is simple. There is a hoop, and you put a ball through a hoop, and you have 5 guys that try and work together to put that ball through the hoop. And football is pretty simple in the sense that you got to move the ball 10 yards to keep going, and 4 downs, and you try and get the football into the end zone or through the uprights. You know, in soccer, there's a goal, and everybody on the team is trying to kick the ball into the goal. And really, you don't have to know too much about it to understand what's happening. And in jiu-jitsu, you can see positions that just don't make any sense to you, and you don't realize the struggle that's happening. Now, we understand the fact that maybe, okay, this guy's trying to choke this guy, or this guy's trying to submit this guy with a joint lock. And you can even understand what a joint lock is. But if you see somebody in spider web where they have an arm trapped and they're holding the leg, and they're trying to find a way to stop this grip that, you know, maybe they've connected their hands, or they're trying to get their elbow to the floor, or whatever the difference is, there is no understanding of what is happening in this 30 seconds that makes this different than any other 30 seconds in the match. And because of that, I think things like judo, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, the more traditional martial arts, because there's so much things that are not visually like easily observed, I think that we'll never have casual viewership.
No, and they've tried, but in the past, right? They've had real professional wrestling, which was, you know, real wrestlers, right? And they went, nobody watched it. I don't know if you guys remember this in the late 90s, but they had, I don't remember, Contender is what it was called. But they put like Dan Henderson versus like USA wrestlers, right? And I thought it was awesome. But nobody else did, so it didn't last. Right? And it was a good try. I mean, because that, if you go back and watch that event for us, for Nerd, I mean, it was like Carlos Newton was on it, Kenny Monday.
It was in the ring. It was in the ring, wasn't it?
It was in a cage.
Was it in a cage?
Yeah,
Okay.
the same guy that, I'm pretty sure, the same guy that did Extreme Fighting, John Peretta, I think his name, or, you know, I might be messing up stuff, but you know, he did it.
No, I think you got it right. It was John Peretta, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and look, man, it was great for us. But here's what I'm thinking while we were talking. I think this is what everything meant. Every sport you mentioned, right? It's a martial art, right? So it's not martial art as a king. Like, what separates everything with people like boxing, right? They don't understand boxing. What they all have is the exciting knockout, and that is kind of exactly what Gary said. It's like putting a ball through the hoop. Like, if I knock you out, right, like a slam dunk. It's the thing. It's exciting. The submission don't do it for somebody, because they're like, that guy tapped out. What a wuss, right? They don't get that thing, or he's a quitter. And because you know, I used to watch UFCs and stuff with my friends' parents, and they would be like, my day, I would just stood up and just stomped on that guy's face. They don't understand. Like, they would say that flat out, like, and I'd be like, nah, you wouldn't be able to get out of my arm bar, you know, and they'd be like, yeah, whatever, you know, we just wouldn't do it. My uncle used to say, he's like, I'd fight with one fucking arm. I don't give a shit, you know, like that kind of shit. I'm like, buddy, it's, you know, so again, it goes, you don't understand it, but it is the knockout, right? Like, we all know, and all the guys that do jiu-jitsu, right, the next time they watch a UFC, they said, man, I understand it better now. It's much more exciting, but they still want to see the knockout, right? That's why they stand them up.
Yeah.
I will also be honest. I love jiu-jitsu. I don't complain about the UFC. I love watching people get knocked out, and I like to trade and bang. I love when they do the jiu-jitsu too, but I'm more excited if I see a crazy head kick, spinning elbow, blah, blah, blah. I get really excited about the submissions too, but I Conor McGregor, like, I know people don't like the guy, but like, dude, I was at his fight with Aldo. That was exciting. That 12-second knockout. I was up going crazy, and the whole crowd was going crazy. You're never going to see a whole crowd go crazy unless it's something crazy like the Matt Hughes, you know, going unconscious with Carlos Newton, or it's got to be something crazy, right, for a submission. And it's what it is, right? It's part of the fandom, right? That's why in West Virginia, for example, people show up to Tough Mans and Rough and Rowdies where people don't train. I can't stand that. I don't want to watch two people that don't train. No offense to those organizations. I love those people. The guys that run them, Jerry Thomas and Chris Smith, great organizations. And I even tell them same thing. Like, that's just not what I'm into. I don't watch people fight on the street either. I don't watch, you know, I'm like, that's stupid. I don't care. I'd rather watch the technical fight. So that's me. But they pack the crowd because people don't care if you can fight or not. They just want to see you get knocked out. Right?
They just
So
want
it kind
to
of
see
proves the
those
point.
people swinging haymakers. Somebody, one of
Yeah.
them lands, somebody's gonna get knocked out. You
This
know?
is where me and Butch are going to separate ways, because normally me and Butch are almost always in agreement. Just about everything we talk about as far as like combat sports go. There is nothing better. Like for me, one of my most guilty pleasures is watching street fights on YouTube. If I can find a good street fight where nobody knows anything and people are just windmilling punches and it's the ugliest form ever, that's my favorite thing. I have spent hours going down rabbit holes of girl fights, hair pulling, just bum fight. I'm the guy. The reason bum fights was able to survive was probably because of me, because I watched every single one of those. And it's
God.
I love that stuff. Show me two people who don't know shit and that want to beat the shit out of each other. I'll watch that all day.
It's like
Yeah,
watching
well-
fights in the bathroom as a kid and being the instigator on it. It's like, y'all ain't gonna fight.
Yeah.
It's
You're not gonna do
exactly what it
nothing.
is. It's exactly what it is.
Well, and that's the thing. And you're with everybody else in the world, right? Like, I get it. I know it's the weirdest thing, right? I just, for me, something just one day, and I was with you, Gary. I had the Bun Fights DVDs, and it's,
Yes.
that's very socially unacceptable. Like, in fact, it was unacceptable back then when you could do anything. That's why they took
Yep.
them off the market, right? But yeah, I mean, there was a time I liked that. And then at a certain point, like once I started training, I was like, I just want to see, like, you know, these guys put it in there, not like somebody land a lucky punch or whatever. For me, I don't know. And maybe it really was like World Star Hip Hop or whatever what is that called? World Star videos?
World Star. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what turned me off to that, because every time I'd be like, you see that fight, I'm like, God, that's not fighting. Or you know, it's just like when you say people get mad when they, you know, say that we do karate, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
that I don't have anything bad. I know I don't hate karate, right? But it's like disrespecting what I do in a way. That's what I feel about those fights, is like, because I don't want people to say, well, that's what you do. I'm like, no, like, not, it's what I do, you know. But again,
and you also have to realize now, and I don't know how Jeremy feels about bum fights or not. I love it, but we also have to recognize that you were doing something different, right, for West Virginia. Like at some point, you had to try and separate yourself from bum fights or from Kimbo Slice backyard. Like, you were trying to say that this isn't that this isn't.
well,
This isn't
yeah,
just street
actually,
fights. And so I understand the division, right? And you had to move yourself away from that because of what you're trying to get accomplished in West Virginia, which is something that I didn't have to do.
no, that's a solid, like, it almost actually makes me think you're a good therapist, because I feel like you actually really did just uncover why that happened, because that is true. Now that you mentioned that, it's 100% like it all comes together like a puzzle. That is what it was. So, and to expand upon that, for people to know, is like, to try to get MMA legal, it had to not be that, right? Like, if I'm talking to, you know, senators or, you know, House of Delegates, all these people, and they're saying, well, this is nothing more than a human cockfight, right?
Yeah.
That's what they said. They're like that. And like, I remember talking to, and then like, and you're in a cage? Well, like, what? You're like, you're fighting? No way. You know, all this on and on and on. And then that really was it. I spent so much time saying, no, this is a real sport, because it wasn't mainstream yet. UFC was not legal in every state. Like, I was one of the, like, you know, at the end, but the fight went on for a long time in West Virginia, but at the end it was just West Virginia and New York. And so that makes it sound better. Like, you know, they were just hanging on, but no, there was a fight early on because the commission here hated MMA, and that bothered me. Right. So like, I mean, Gary, you really did hit it on the head. It was like, I think I spent so much time trying to legitimize the sport that everything else, it got turned off for me. Right. Because that was the thing. I would probably trash some other stuff, not meaning I didn't like them, but I was like, no, like you guys are perfectly fine with two guys getting off a bar stool and swinging from the fences, and they may have a heart attack and they don't train. And this guy's, you know, drunk and, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And you guys are completely fine with it. And you're actually at the event cheering it on, where these guys spend their whole life training in martial arts and being respectful and getting up here. And then you saying it's a human cockfight. I'm like, no. And so like, I think you're right. I mean, it turned me off. And then And then that was the thing, you know, when I did bring MMA here, I was like, it's not going to be that. Like, I'm going to try to make it as professional as you can be. And my show, like the first couple shows we did, you know, we sold tables, but those tables were sold to lawyers and doctors, and people did say that. I was trying to make it like a UFC type thing without, and actually we did have former UFC fighters on there, but I was trying to sell that. But what I did find out, a couple of things happened in West Virginia, and why, you know, I was never going to do events very long anyway. And I told everybody at the beginning, it's like, I'm going to 2 or 3 because I want to make sure they're done right. Because the people that were throwing those crazy events, those who was going to jump into the MMA, the same people that were trashing MMA, saying it should be illegal, were the first in line to put events on. Right. So I was like, no, I'm going to put them on first. Maybe people look at this as a template, and maybe, you know, and plus I'm going to protect people, whatever, you know, those are my thoughts. And, you know, anyway, it turned out that, you know, the first couple people went to, and then it dwindled, right? Turned out that's not really what people wanted to see. They did want to see the craziness. That's what sold tickets, right? That's fine. The other problem was, it wasn't all that, but the other problem is those tough man and rough and rowdy fights and stuff. It's an ingenious, the whole thing's ingenious, because you can get 100 guys from Charleston, West Virginia, or Huntington or whatever, that are going to all sell tickets, right? And the fact that they don't have to train means you can get 100, you can get 1 million of them. I can just put an ad up, go sign up. And that's what people do. And then you bring your whole high school, your whole college, and whatever. Well, the hard thing with MMA is you got to train. So there's not that many fighters. There may, at that time, there was probably, like, I had the only people in Charleston. So there was like 2 people from Charleston to sell tickets. Everybody else was somewhere else. I underestimated the fact that people would want to see these former UFC fighters that I paid a bunch of money to have, like Brandon Hinkle and a bunch of, I mean, there's a bunch of great people, but like the general fan didn't really care, like, you know, because it was like, you're not the UFC. I'll go watch the UFC, but you're not the UFC. I'd rather see somebody from my hometown fight, right? So the writing on the wall was luckily, you know, I got out. But if you guys have noticed, like, well, you probably don't notice, but there are no more MMA fights in West Virginia. It's not because people don't like it. It's just, it's too hard to sell the ticket, right? It's not a recipe for success. And I know why. And it's not, again, you know, the other things are fine. You know, I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, and that's why I always want to preface it by saying, I am not putting anybody down that does this stuff. All my friends did rough and rowdies and tough mans, and I was there cheering them on when they fought. I've trained people that do them. Just, you know, now at this stage, and probably what Gary said, I'm a little bit jaded because I had to fight so hard to show the legitimacy of the sport, and even jiu-jitsu for that matter. I mean, that same commission made jiu-jitsu illegal at one point, right? So it's like, you know, I was put in a bad spot where I'm like, I can't do that kind of stuff, right? Or I probably could now if I wanted to, but at that time, like, if I did that, I had like a big, you know, X on my face, right? Gary, I think you're on mute somehow.
Sorry, the dogs were barking earlier, and so I muted so they wouldn't come through. You know, I think that's the thing, is like, you were trying to provide a higher expectation of the sport that others weren't, and you had the disadvantage of of ignorance in general population as far as to what MMA was, you know.
Yes,
in comparison to what boxing is. And in my opinion, I think it takes, obviously, I think it's proven itself, but I think it takes a lot more to be an MMA fighter than it does to be a boxer. Now, I'm not saying that the guys train any harder, that they do anything, that they're working harder. That's not a lack of talent or dedication to a sport for boxers, but there's just so much more to learn with MMA if you want to be elite. But the general fan doesn't know that. The general fan just doesn't. They don't recognize the fact that, oh wait, you can be elbowed, you can be kneed, you can be choked, you can have your joints manipulated, you can be kicked. Like, all of these things are now in, like, nothing against boxing, because some of my favorite fights are boxing fights, but there's a lot of variables taken out of boxing that you don't have to worry about in MMA. And trying to explain that to a casual fan just doesn't equate.
No, they can't seem to grasp it from what I've gathered anyway. You know,
Right, and because of that, we'll keep getting Logan Paul versus ex MMA fighter
but
after ex MMA
and
fighter.
he'll also make it illegal for them to knock him out too, though. I mean, I mean, come on.
Well, yeah. So for people that don't know, if there's a lot of, if you look at some of these contracts, just to clarify that, apparently, especially on this Tyrone Woodley fight, there was a special clause that said he couldn't knock him out. Right. It's controversial. Some people say it's not true. I think Tyron's camp posted a contract. I think the show it was. But I also know like that was the rule in the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson fight that they couldn't knock each other out either. But they're not, at least that one I knew coming up. It's worse if I pay $50 for a fight and then secretly it's got written in there, you can't do this, you can't do that. Then I'm not really watching a fight and you probably wouldn't buy it. But that goes back to also too, I was thinking when you said that, I wouldn't say irony, but I guess like me saying I don't watch that stuff. And I've watched every one of those darn people fight. So, I mean, I have mostly because of my kids, but it's the same thing. It might, like it's on TV. My kids want to watch them. But that is like a true testament of all that stuff. Cause my kids are casual fans. It's not like an MMA or jiu-jitsu household like you would think. We don't talk about it. So it's funny. They think they know far more than I do. You would think like, they would be like, ask my opinion, but like, they'll be like, who's going to win this fight? And I'd say, well, Woodley should, but I don't think he doesn't train and whatever. I'll say something. And they're like, you're stupid because Jake Paul's the man. Like he's going to kill everybody. Or Logan Paul's like that Logan Paul Mayweather fight. They sat and told me how like Logan Paul is the best boxer in the history of boxing. He just took out the best boxer ever and blah, blah, and like on and on. And I was like, there was no sense in really, I mean, I tried.
Like, you want me to box you, kid? No, I'm just
and I was trying to explain like, this is not real boxing, like one guy is gonna, like the other guy don't care. And it was very hard, but anyway, so they just think I'm an idiot,
I didn't know that there's the possibility of those clauses existing. So I can't tell you how happy it made me to know that I allegedly stole those off of the internet and didn't watch them legally. Allegedly.
Yeah, I think that's the case for most people. We'll say that. Yeah, that I can't remember which one it was, but that first Triller card I watched was the worst thing I've ever watched in the history of my life. And again, I don't want to disrespect those people, but that's just not my cup of tea. I mean, I didn't want to, like when the announcer said I'm going to come or something like that. And like, they're just saying dumb shit the whole time. And then it was like a Justin Bieber concert broke out. It's like, what's going on? But
I went to watch the fights and a Justin Bieber concert broke out.
Yeah. I was like, well, that's what I saw Tom DeBlas post. Cause I thought, am I the only one thinking this is weird? And it like Tom had posted before Justin saying it was all the hip hop people, right? But he just said, I tuned in to watch fights and I'm getting, old men singing hip hop because I think it was like Snoop and Ice Cube and nothing. Again, I like those guys, but I'm ready to watch a fight. Like I don't hear you guys like it's a different genre, it's a different thing, but yeah, whatever. Again, because some wild stuff that we're involved in, but now the craziness.
Yeah, you can thank I guess the YouTube for that, right? Which is, I mean, that's cool. But even like going back to the Jake Paul thing, man, it's like I had one of my kids students is like, oh, Jake Paul, he's like the best boxer ever. I'm like, and then I'm like, you know who Mike Tyson is? He's like, who's Mike Tyson? I'm like, geez, dude. I'm like, just get out of here already.
Yeah, well, I'll be excited to see him fight coming up. By the way, Mike Tyson. That should be.
I've seen something about that.
Ironically, he's fighting Logan Paul. So, and I will tune in for that because it is one. If they don't have a knockout clause, which I'm hearing that they might not, right? I don't know. Then I want to watch it. And then hell, if Logan Paul beats Mike Tyson, good for him. I don't care. I was actually rooting for him.
Gets that monster out at that point, and then knocks his block off his head, or whatever. Just knocks his block off.
Yeah, but it is funny, right? Like I'm saying, well, I don't watch those, and I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna watch that one. There is. So I do dabble, I guess. But
I hate to say it, but I would watch it too. I would.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not? That's Mike Tyson's our Michael Jordan, I guess, for our sports, right? Like all of us that were young enough to watch those fights, like nobody will, that meme that's going on right now where it's like, I forget what it said, like Conor McGregor's fought 14 times in 6 years or whatever it is. And Mike Tyson fought 15 times in 1 year in 1985 or whatever it is. That's crazy, right? That's because nobody was making it more than a minute with him. He could literally fight all the time if he wanted to, right? Like, and we forget how good that guy was. Like, no matter how good Canelo is, and obviously he's not a heavyweight, or Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, they were just not decimating people like Mike Tyson was. And those guys are amazing. I love Tyson Fury. I'm not a huge Deontay Wilder fan, but I can't deny the power that the guy has. If he hits you, he's going to kill you. But it's still like, his knockout record would be better than Mike Tyson's, but like Mike Tyson's knockouts, I mean, that was when his prime, man, he was just smoking people, right?
Yeah.
It's the good old days. I think, yeah, and I think yes, and that, like Smoke said on here on this Instagram, we all had Mike Tyson's Punch Out as well. It's one of my favorite games, right? Like trying to beat him at the end. Yeah.
Even playing on the arcade at the pizza place back in the day.
all I know is, and there's celebrity-esque, because the Logan Pauls or whatever. The fight that I'm waiting to see is Charlie Zelenoff versus anybody.
I'm glad you brought him up, because I was thinking of his name when he mentioned Deontay Wilder.
Do you know who Charlie Zelenoff is, Butch?
I do. Yeah, he's the guy that everybody hates, right? But and for
best boxer ever.
Yes, I mean, for people that don't know, there's a good video that going around that we've all seen, but there's more, and you guys probably see more than I saw. But I saw those fights because it pissed me off, right? Where he'd say, "Hey, you want to?" Like somebody be like, "Well, kind of, but just don't hit me," and then they would still be putting the gloves on, and he'd just start.
This asshole would show up at just like a Planet Fitness or like whatever. He would show up and be like, "Hey, you want to spar?" And the guy would be like, "This guy just came in to do squats and deadlifts and then go back to his job. He's there for his lunch break." And he'd be like, I guess I'll put some gloves on." And the guy would go ahead and put the gloves on and like Velcro them on. And then Zelenoff, or however you say it, and he's like teeing off on the guy. And the guy's like, "I think I'm just showing up and maybe we're going to touch gloves and like pitter patter." And he's trying to knock him out. And the guy would like sit down and be like, hey, whatever, I'm done. Well, then Zelenoff, like, guys, if you want to see the greatest justice of all time in all things, the Deontay Wilder that one's good.
But the 16-year-old.
Yes. Yeah, I knew you knew. I could see by the way you're
I didn't
smiling.
see that. So what is this one?
God. There's a 16-year-old kid. And Charlie goes in and he gets in the ring, and this kid starts lighting him up. And like the first 30 seconds of it is just him slipping. And
I think I did see that. Is it a black kid or no?
Yeah. And Charlie couldn't touch the kid. He's slipping, ducking, diving offline, and then when he unloads, he blasts him like 3 or 4 times, and then Charlie starts dipping out of the ring, sticking his head out the ropes. Yeah, and then they get out, and he drops the N-bomb on the kid, I think. I'm not positive. I think he does.
Either. I can't remember either.
He chokes him out. He's like, "Say you quit, say I won." He's like, "You won," as he's getting choked out. It was the greatest thing.
In that video, though, like he would jump out of the ring, and like the other guy was still, but I think that's what got him so fired up, because he'd be like, "I'm done, you're killing me." But then he'd come back and he'd be like, "Well, I hit you in the body. I hit you. I just hit you." I'd be like, "Oh, I'll kill you then don't quit." Right? Or I do remember that. Yeah, because then they fought, like it was supposed to be over, and they fought on the mat, and he kept chasing them down. Right?
Yeah. But
I
wouldn't let him leave the gym. It was great.
What is
he needed that? He needed that, and he needed Deontay Wilder to beat that ass too.
What's what I was gonna say? What is, because in my mind it almost is the same video. What happens in the Deontay Wilder video? Because I
think he was I thought he said something about him making fun of his kid or something. I think Deontay Wilder's kid is
special needs or something.
Special needs, I believe. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but it's something.
I know. I think you are right. I don't know if it's his kid or something, but he referenced someone in his family.
Yeah.
And was kind of like making light of it or whatever. and that's the reason Wilder wanted him to come and like beat the piss out of him. He made himself available so he could beat the shit out of him.
But so
Yeah.
did he show up at Wilder's gym or vice
I
versa? Or
think
how did
so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he showed up
it was at
Wilder's.
Wilder's gym, and all of Wilder's guys like had to kind of like stop him from going too far. I think Wilder was he knew how much to hit him, but he just did everything he needed to do to make him look like a little bit of a bitch.
Yeah, like because he is. I mean, let's be honest. Like I can't stand people like that. I really can't. That's just me though.
Well, no, none of us can, right? I think that's why, we would all watch that. But I wonder, he must have believed his own hype. Like I can't imagine showing up to fight Deontay Wilder. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no matter how tough
Yeah.
I think I am, I'm like, it just
I mean, I
wouldn't
personally
happen.
wouldn't want to fight him, myself.
No. Like,
Uh,
I know everybody makes the joke, like I'd fight anybody for, $1 million or whatever. But like, sometimes you got to question that. Like, you may not come back ever from a Deontay Wilder knockout. Like, if you're just an average dude, like, I don't know if you really want that. They don't know what that means. Like,
exactly. Is that money worth you not being able to use it, or you're going to put that money towards the medical bills to continue feeding you on the feeding tube?
yes.
That you're going to be on. I mean,
Yeah. So I mean,
And I think honestly, if we're being honest about Zelenoff, we're talking about him. I think it is important to know that I don't know that he was completely okay. Like
I don't think he was.
I'm pretty sure he had some issues that he was working through as far as like, maybe his serotonin levels weren't exactly up to par, or
Yeah.
I don't know. But he had some issues. He had some stuff going on that maybe isn't there now. Obviously,
a little off.
yeah. Obviously, it doesn't allow what he had done, and I think I don't know if you guys have ever watched those instant karma videos or anything like that on YouTube, or I guess TikTok has them now too, but like it's instant karma where somebody's being an asshole and then they immediately like whatever deity is shining upon them says, yeah, I'm going to smite you now for being such a jerk. But there's instant karma, and that's what the 16-year-old kid and the Wilder with Zelenoff, that's what those were, is like one of those things where it's like, this is you getting your comeuppance. Like, you've earned this, you asshole. And speaking of Zelenoff, he actually had some fights, and if you watch his actual sanctioned fights, he's not great. He's not very good at all.
that's what I was going to
Yeah.
ask. 'Cause I don't know his background.
I
If
don't
he did
either.
anything. I remember. I assumed he was carrying around a fake belt, right? Because I remember he'd have a belt at places and stuff. And I mean, there's
think they took that one, right? Like they're like, well, you brought your belt, and it's all, I don't know, something like that. The
That's what I was gonna
16-year-old that
say.
beat him up.
That's hilarious. What's
Yeah,
funny, the sad thing, there's some, I don't know if they're still around, but there's a couple guys in West Virginia that do this. They don't do what he was doing, punch people, but they show up at places with wearing belts, and I know they don't fight. Like, there's a guy that's teaching Muay Thai there for a while that would show up wearing his belt to class and say that he fought Muay Thai. And actually, a friend of mine did try to do that same scenario, went and challenged him because they knew he showed up with this belt every Wednesday at this one gym. So he went up, just, I guess it got on his nerves and was going to fight him or something, but kind of a similar situation, but people be crazy, man. Right. Like, that's,
Yeah. I don't understand carrying around then again, I've never won a champion belt, so I can't really, but then again, if I did win one, I wouldn't carry it around my waist all the damn time. I mean, that's just like me whenever I get my black belt or something, it's like I'm not gonna wear it all the time. I'm gonna wear it whenever I go put my gi on.
it
but
makes
that's about
sense,
it.
but I don't know. Tim Sylvia did it in the UFC, and I didn't hate on him for it. I was at
That's the UFC though.
yeah,
Now,
that's what I'm saying.
if I won the UFC belt, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm gonna sleep with this thing for a minute and maybe
Yeah.
carry it around here and
He
there.
legit wore it everywhere. Like, I remember, because I don't know if the UFC was ran differently back then, but I was like in line at the Staples Center. That's when I was still with Hoist, and Hoist was fighting Matt Hughes, so I was there, and But like Tim Sylvia and somebody else was also in line like to get tickets or something, and he was wearing his belt, and I was like, I was more like that. I was just taken aback by the fact that he was in line, and then he might have just been going to like Will Call and getting some tickets or something. But it like he waited in line, and it's just like that's odd, and nobody talked to him. That was the other thing too. I mean, imagine like nowadays, like everybody be like all over, but like nobody was like even saying anything, and it was like obvious who he was because he had his championship belt on, right? So he's like not
You've
even trying to
obviously
hide.
seen him fight.
Yeah, so I don't. I mean, it might have been like a product of the UFC not being that big back then, because they didn't sell it the Staples Center. They put it there because they're thinking, that was Royce's return fight. This is going to be huge, and it's in California. He's was in Torrance. It didn't sell out. Like, sadly enough, like we
Crazy too.
bought. What's that?
That's crazy that it didn't sell out.
No, it was like we had bought tickets way early on, and we were like in the nosebleed, and like scalpers, because they had bought most of the tickets to try to resell them, were selling front row or at least bottom section tickets cheaper than what I paid for nosebleed, because they're just trying to dump them because it was so
Wow.
like empty. It was crazy. I mean, it was just crazy. Just because they think of where it's came now, right? They'd sell at the Staples Center, I think, no matter what, right? It don't matter who's on it. And it's just, I don't know. It was weird. So I guess that would have been 2004 or 5 or something like that. And just wild
And,
stuff.
I mean, but still, like even then, I remember the UFC still like it was still big, like it was big. But I mean, I think that was when Zuffa or the Fertitta or whatever Fertitta brothers at the time. I think that's how I'm pronouncing
Yeah.
it.
But that was
They-
like, I think the Staples Center was like a big step up back then. I don't think that was like a normal thing back then. Like they're selling out probably still arenas, but small ones, what I mean? I think. I mean, it's a long time ago, but it's weird to see where it came from, because it was not mainstream yet still. It's not like, now it's on ESPN, and like I remember back then we'd get excited if ESPN mentioned the UFC. You'd be like, oh my God, they mentioned it today. And everybody be like hyped up. So
Now
it
it's
probably
on
had yeah, so it probably had something to do with it. It was still a little bit fringe, right? Even to me, it doesn't seem like it's any different, but it was, right? Because I can remember just even like sitting in the stands. That's back in the day, and Gary and I had talked about this last podcast, where when people wear tap out shirts, you knew who they were. That's when tap out was like at the event, right? And if you had a tap out shirt, like you were something.
Good old
But I
days.
knew, yeah, like in the dang Staples Center, I knew most of the people in the crowd. Like it was odd, like just through training. So it was like not your casual fan. It'd be like, oh, that's another guy that does jujitsu that I know of somewhere. This guy does MMA that I know of on a small show. And it was odd. It's like, because now, like I said, I was at, I've been to a few fights since, and like you don't know anybody, of course, and as you shouldn't. Just like like if I go to a concert, I don't know anybody, right? But it's weird how it's come like that, And
It is. Like I even even some of the people I trained with down in Florida, now I'm seeing them fighting on the UFC too. It's like two of the girls that I cross trained with, is now fighting in the UFC. And I got another friend who I cross trained with fights for Bellator now. Two of the girls that fight in UFC, one of them's Hannah Goldie, the other is Cheyenne Blisma, which she's Cheyenne Buys now. But it's just crazy to see that, seeing people that you see in the amateur leagues now fighting, that you cross train with, also fighting in the big leagues too. But it's like you can see the growth though from how the UFC used to be till now, but it's just crazy to see those people fighting in the big leagues. But when they there's so many fighters, and it's like, coming back to how we talked earlier, the people that paved the way, it's given them, it's given, the people that's fighting now, the way to get there, but will you ever remember, them, and I think it's important to bring those people up, whenever, even whenever they're long gone, out of the UFC and stuff like that, instead of just, because it's always a continuous evolution, it seems, you've got continuous, people, they're signing continuous fighters and stuff like that. the sport is always evolving. I mean, even whenever you watch it from the first UFC to now, it's insane how much, the people, compare then to where they were just training one art to how they're training now, and it's just insane how it's evolved and how it's changed.
And that's the great thing about sports too, right? Is like is that it always gives you the opportunity to argue the greatest of all time, and the older the sport gets, regardless of what sport it is, it gives you the opportunity to argue, well, what did this guy mean to his generation compared to the next guy? Where does Anderson Silva stack up on the greatest of all time compared to whoever the hot name is now, whether it be Kumar Usman or Khabib or, pound for pound, the arguments, right? It's and kind of talking about like then and now. The other thing that I like about that is how what shouldn't ever be a name, and I like these things, like people you should never know, regardless of how big the sport gets, and you end up knowing about them. So in football, like Ed Hockley, I don't know how much you guys follow professional football, but Ed Hockley, yeah. So Ed Hockley is an umpire, is the head umpire, head referee, and well, not anymore. I think he's retired. His son is actually a referee now, but like, he's one of those guys that the average viewer would know nothing about, and somehow made it his way into like a little bit of fandom. And I love those things. And it reminded me of, like, as you guys were talking about some of the older fighters and the things that are different. I was lucky enough to get to talk to Herb Dean when he was reffing fights in Columbus, and I went up, and this is ages ago. I wasn't even doing jiu-jitsu at this point. I was just a fight fan. And so I went to Columbus and was watching. The big name on the card was Wes Sims, and Wes Sims was fighting against a guy who had a ton of matches. It was like his record was like 112 and 44 something. It was crazy like that.
Like, Shannon Rich or something like that, or
it might have been. He had a crazy record. It was just
Jeremy Horn. No.
I think he actually, because I had mentioned Jeremy Horn when me and my buddy Roy were at these fights, and I was like, he's had more fights than Jeremy Horn, and I'd never heard. How have I not heard of this guy? But so anyway, Herb Dean was the referee. Obviously, I was a huge UFC fan, just a huge MMA fan in general. And I was like, I'm going to go down between, like, they're going to take a break here a little bit. I'm going to go talk to Herb Dean if I can. And in my head, because I was fanboying out a little bit. I was such a big fan. I was like, there's no way he's going to talk to me. He's not going to have time for me. And I go down there and he's like, man, no one ever comes and talks to me. He's like, how do you know who I am? And I remember specifically, I talked to him. It was shortly after Gabriel Gonzaga had fought Mirko Cro Cop. And head kicked him, right? So he head kicked him. And if you go back and watch this fight, now I'm telling, this is secrets, right? Then this is how you know this is Gary's information, because I don't think Herb Dean told anyone else this in the entire world. I think he just told me. In that fight, after Gabriel Gonzaga head kicks Cro Cop falls. He kind of falls backwards on his leg, and it looks ugly, almost like his leg is backwards, and he could have blown out ACL, MCL.
Yeah, it looked like damage. He did.
Yeah. Then Gonzaga gets on top of him, just like ground and pound on an unconscious Mirko Cro Cop. And Herb Dean comes in, saves the day, rips him off the top of Mirko Cro Cop, and he looks down at Cro Cop and kind of looks to the leg, and he goes, oh, and turns away. And I thought he was like, oh my God, the leg. I hope he didn't blow his ACL, MCL out. And I asked him about that. What happened that made you kind of like put your hands over your eyes and turn away? He goes, oh no, when I was rushing in to stop Gonzaga from the ground and pound, Gonzaga pulls back and his elbow smacks me in the face.
Oh shoot.
And he's like, he's like, I was just being a bitch because I got elbowed in the face. And that was one of those things. But it was one of those things that, like, I'm talking to a guy who I'm like, oh man, you're on this upper echelon. He was like, no one ever talks to me. What are you
Yeah.
doing down here talking to me? Nobody cares about who the referee is for this match. But now it's nice to see that those guys like him and Jason Herzog, Justin Herzog, those guys, like people respect the fact that those guys have a hard job. You know, it's not easy, and it's
I could
I
imagine.
I like the underlying celebrity as much as I do the Conor McGregors or the Khabib Nurmagomedovs. I like that stuff too.
What, and I'm with you. I got a couple stories about those guys too. But before I say that, I was thinking, do you, just out of curiosity, do you guys know who has the most fights? Like, it's not UFC, but like he did fight in the UFC, but most fights in general, wins, losses, since we're talking about that.
I do not personally. I know Jeremy Horn has a lot of fights
Horns,
under his.
I mean, if I had to make a guess, Horn's up there on my list of people who have had a ridiculous number of fights, because there for a while he was fighting twice a week.
So
That's crazy.
Travis Fulton. I don't know if you guys know
Travis
him.
Fulton, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unreal. And he's a good, so my original trainer, my boxing, kickboxing trainer, and really even my first jiu-jitsu trainer is Leon Ramsey, who's the commissioner of West Virginia now. But he used to come down and train with them, and it's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys got time to look it up, but I mean, he probably had like 250 wins, 100 losses. I don't know,
Crazy.
but same thing. And the reason he was on he was on Team Extreme with Jeremy Horn. They were fighting tournaments every weekend. And there's a crazy fight, if you ever, if people haven't seen it, where Travis Fulton choke slams a guy. I don't know if you guys ever seen it. It is amazing. If you ever want to look, like if you like World Star, whatever those things are, and those things,
He literally choke slammed the dude.
yeah, you should look at. Yeah, he fought a Taekwondo guy in one of these Iowa, little battles.
Oh, I think yes, I remember that. And he literally
Yes.
he destroyed that guy, didn't
Yeah.
he? Like he slammed him and it was over with.
Yeah, it was bad. Like,
I
yes, it was
remember
bad.
that.
It's like
I
a
remember
legit
that.
Undertaker choke slam, and
Yeah.
they had to take the guy off in a stretcher, and the guy was like writhing in pain. And
So
I
I didn't realize it. Now that you said that, I looked it up. It was Travis Fulton who he fought. I knew who Travis Fulton was.
That's
I know who
awesome.
he is now, but I didn't know who he was then. And he won a decision over Wes Sims. And at the time, he was 211, 43, and 10.
So crazy.
Man.
And then, I mean, on top of that, though, Travis Fulton was fighting a lot of boxing matches. He had some boxing matches in around West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I think fought like a low-level champion, a heavyweight champion, like one of those guys that had one of those random, alphabet belts, and that dude, and he could name, that was the amazing thing. Like, I talk about my brain damage or whatever, but man, Fulton could name you every fight he's been in and about stuff I don't know about now. But it's amazing. He's on my Instagram. He'll bring up stuff every now and then. That's really why, like, I knew he had the most fights anyway, but he'll bring it up every now and then because he'll be part of a trivia thing, and then he'll screenshot it and put on his Instagram or something. So something to be proud of, because nobody's going to break that record. It's like because you can't, right? Like,
That's a lot.
it's a lot. Yeah,
He finished with over 300 fights.
it's so crazy. And I'd say, other than, Colin said it was Jeremy Bullock. It was the choke slam guy. If you ever want to look it up, it's amazing fight. But he took very little damage. He was a wrestler, so he basically took everybody down. So he took very little damage. Now boxing might have made it a little bit worse for him, but amazing, right? But going back to what you're saying, Garrett, like, I was a big fan of all. I think if you were, to me, like, if you're part of the UFC in general, like, I was a fan of you. Like, it didn't matter who you were. Like, the same reason, like, people like Dana White, like nobody's clamoring for the commissioner of basketball, or, I guess you would know the NFL commissioner a little bit more because it's more controversial, but they know him and they boo him, right? They don't like him, right? And Dana White's one of those guys, like, people want to meet him, right? Like, love him or hey, they want to meet him. It's the same. And the same thing, like, when I had a friend named, his name was Mike. I think his last name is Voles or whatever, but he trained with Herb Dean, and Herb fought, I don't know if it was on King of the Cage, but he definitely fought in something called Gladiator Fights.
No, it was both. He fought in Gladiator Fights and King of the Cage. And that's actually how I knew about Herb Dean, was before he ever started reffing, because I think he went to that, he went to Big John's school. to be a referee, right? And so I like before I ever knew of him as a referee, I knew of him as a fighter and King of the Cage. And so that was my first exposure to him.
Well, and I think we talked about this before. There was, us old school guys collected every fight tape. That's kind of what our thing was. Right? Like, because you couldn't really watch fights. They weren't local. There was not internet, wasn't that big, but yes, exactly.
I remember renting many UFCs from the local video stores,
Yeah, I mean, and exactly. And then, then you might get lucky and they're on sale and you can buy them, or, people had, pirated tapes and we trade them. And that's, I was trading tapes and events with people in, California, like I said, my friend Mike. And then I was getting those Gladiator, like, I think the same people that were doing King of the Cage were doing Gladiator. And then like, because Gladiator was supposed to be like a smaller version, and then like King of the Cage was more like the pro level. But there was a time when King of the Cage was definitely the number 2 in the United States, right? Like, as UFC and King of the Cage, and then Pride was in Japan, and you can argue which one was bigger, like Pride or UFC. Like, I would say Pride, because they're filling out the Superdome and stuff like that. It just didn't have the exposure here. But it was crazy, like those days and watching all that stuff. And anyway, like to your point, like what I was saying is, Herb Dean was plenty famous to me because I knew he's a referee and a fighter, and I would be the same if I saw him in line, I'd be crazy. And I think at a King of the Cage fight, he threw one of my fighters out of an after party, and I'm trying to make sure I phrase things correctly, but I think he was trying to steal his girlfriend at the time, whenever that was. So that was kind of a funny story, because I was like, not only did I meet him, he tried to bang my friend's girlfriend or something, and it's kind of funny. But then, of course, like the first MMA fights we put on in West Virginia, Dan Mergliotta was our referee, which was awesome. Cool. And he was actually a cool guy. We didn't get off on the best foot. I was a promoter doing everything, and I forget, but when we had like the way that the commission, like even though MMA was legal, they made it so hard to put on a show on purpose so that you would fail, right? So you'd be like, all right, well, you can do a show. Could be only pro. So obviously I'm paying out the wazoo for the fights. The venue had to be over 3,500 seats. Crazy. There's none of those really in West Virginia except for the Civic Center. It's like handcuffed. You had to have these like high dollar video screens that nobody had. Then on top of that, they're like, well, you have to have UFC refs. I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to get UFC refs? Right. Like, but oddly enough, I did. Like, I reached out to some people that knew some people, and I was like, man, I'm paying out the ass. I can't, pay some ref a bunch. And I think they gave me a pretty good break. I don't remember, it might've been $500. I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe they ripped me out. I don't know what referees make, but I was expecting way more. And I don't even know if that was the number, but it was just funny. So anyway, the same person was like, yeah, just get, you can get some hotels, like a double bed. They'll sleep in the same room and do it, whatever. I was like, okay. Wasn't even thinking, but then I just get a phone call from Dan Mergliotta, like pissed about that. He's like, I'm a grown motherfucking man. You think I'm gonna sleep in another bed with another man? I was like, well, I don't expect you to sleep with the guy. I was like, they told me it was okay. And he's like, then he just kept repeating that. He's like, I'm a grown fucking man. Like, so anyway, it was weird because like when you're putting on those events, there's stress from everywhere. The last person I thought I was going to get stress from was Dan Mergliotta, right? I thought he's the guy that helped me, and so I had to calm him down and get him another hotel room. And then, then also I'm freaking out because I don't even know if there was more hotel. Like that fight was in this weird place, Williamson, West Virginia. It was like middle of nowhere.
You say Williamson?
Yeah. Williamson, West Virginia. So
yeah, I know where Williamson is.
Yeah. So as you know, there is not a hotel in Williamson because nobody goes there, right? So the hotel they were staying at was like,
unless you want meth. No, I'm just joking.
Well, you're right. Like it was not a good hotel. Not to badmouth. I mean, it's just not a good. It's only a hotel, and it was on the Kentucky side. There's also Williamson, Kentucky. It's weird. They slap over each other.
I know exactly where it's at. I do. It's a rough place.
Yeah,
let's just be honest. Nothing against
we had
the
a hard
people.
time.
It is though.
What's that?
I said nothing against the people.
No.
But it is a rough place.
Yeah, it's just in the middle of nowhere, and there's not much going on down there. But again, the reason it was there is because they had something called the Williamson Fieldhouse. It's one of the few places in West Virginia that was over 3,500 seats, and it may have been right at 3,500 seats. It's a place they used to put circuses on in the 60s or 70s or 80s, back in the day, something like that. So anyway, yeah. So it was wild, like, we got off the wrong foot. And then once I calmed him down, where I was like, dude, like, I think you're like my hero. I'm not trying to screw you. I'm not, because I think he thought I was just your typical shady, dirty promoter. And that's what they deal with. Right. And I was like, no, man, like once he calmed down and then he met me and then, at the fight, of course I got my picture with him. I'm taking pictures with the refs at my, cause I'm excited, but everything was fine after that. And it actually helped quite a bit. Like they were cool as hell and it was a good experience. The other guy that also ref in UFC, I think it was Gary Copeland, but he's not very famous for people to know who that is. But anyway,
Well, I know who he is, and he doesn't have a neck.
yes, he's just everybody knew he's like a giant bodybuilder as a referee, right? Yeah.
I think I know who you're talking about too. He was literally just like Gary just said. He
no neck. He's just shoulders and a head.
yeah, that's it. Basically like Juggernaut,
exactly. I can't believe you just didn't look at Mirigliata and be like, fuck you, I'm calling up Mario Yamasaki then.
Yeah. Well, he's in Maryland. That would have worked out, right? Yeah, I mean, it's just down the road. No, I mean, the whole thing about that show, though, again, it was like, it was a disaster for, like disaster meaning like, imagine doing something that you want to do and that you're trying to prove is amazing, but you got somebody working in the background, multiple people trying to screw you at every step of the way. And then I'm still like, look, I'm going to do it. I don't care. And then all of that, on top of that, I'm maxing my credit card out, multiple credit cards. I didn't have one that went up that high, but I'm in probably, almost $100,000, where I'm like, if I don't make this money back, I'm screwed. Right. And I'm not thinking of it like I'm going to be the UFC. I'm going to make money. I am going to like just do this for the sport and for West Virginia and help get it, off on the right foot and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like it was crazy time. Right. But anyway, the show went on. It was a great show. I was thankful we had the UFC. We had some, I think that one was called West Virginia versus the World. If maybe not, I don't know. I can't remember all those stuff, but George Euler fight on it. A bunch of crazy people fought on it. And I remember too, that same hotel. It's funny because they called me, the next day or a couple days after, and he was like, "Hey man, like I went through the refrigerator in here, and there's like a bunch of like steroids or something in here, and like, what do you want me to do with it?" And I was like, not, don't call me is what I want you to do with that. Like, is this a trick question? Like, like throw it away, I guess. And so it ended up because then maybe an hour later, I have a fighter call me and he was like, "Hey man, I left some stuff in a room. Do you think you can help me get it?" And I was like, "I know what you're talking about." And I told him to throw it away and he went fucking crazy because he's like, that's $10,000 worth of stuff. So this is what he told me. I don't know. I never saw it, but apparently it was $10,000 worth of human growth hormone. Well, and then he had it, there and forgot.
Was that much? Maybe he should have had it, better concealed and taken care of if he needed it that bad.
Yeah, there was a lot, as with a lot of fighters, there's a lot going on with that guy. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think he was not doing well, and he's probably doing some other stuff. And it was great. You had to deal with all that stuff. But the plus side was it's great stories, right? There's those things that you can remember and that I think's cool. And again, it goes back to what I said, like now we get to pay homage to all those things, right? Like that, we're lucky enough to talk about that stuff and that we can be part of history. And I don't want it to be forgotten, but I don't not for me. I don't want to be like, for even the people that fought in it and that were part of the first event in West Virginia history and that had UFC refs ref them, right? To them, that's their UFC, right? Like it still might have been in Williamson, West Virginia, but Dan Margetta ref their fight, right? Like to me, like if that was me, I'd go crazy, right? Like, I mean, it's cool.
And they also get to show, the fighters of that area, too, that is that, just because that we live, in an area where you don't have the world-class Brazilians coming in and teaching and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that we still can't become champions, and still, get on the same level, as the champions that are in Brazil and stuff like that. That's, That's the way I look at it.
Well, it's right, and it's just about opportunities. I mean, if we go back to what we were saying before, if without Dustin Hazlett fighting in Columbus and that epic fight, there might not have been Dustin Hazlett in the UFC, right? Like he had to get on something and make a splash, and I don't know if that's what did it, because I'm the outside as a fan, but I would think, right? Like to me, that was big news. Like
I
that
would
was pretty
think.
huge. Yeah, I
I
would
mean,
think. Yeah, and it was in a pretty big stage, and everybody got to see it, and so that's all
No,
you
and
need is an opportunity.
yeah, well, and I think that's kind of full circle too. If we look back to WVGO, it's like it is an opportunity to get out there and show your talents, right? I know that that's what me and Butch we are always talking about. It's the reason I love not only competing at WVGO, but like trying to help Butch out whenever I can. If he needs me to ref matches, or if he needs me to, hey, can you take care
well,
of
I've
this
seen you
issue
there
that's
almost
going on?
every time. I see you
Yeah,
there almost every time.
me and Butch have talked about it off to the side, but like I was a little bit broken not being able to be there last week. One, because I had one of my students from Ohio was having his first match and ended up going 7-0, and I can't tell you how proud I am of him.
Absolutely, that's
And not
awesome.
not that you guys don't know, because you know how it is when you watch you guys compete. But those things, the first time somebody competes, those things are special. And to know how much he loved it, like to miss that kind of bothered me. But it's part of the reason that I love Butch. It's part of the reason I love jiu-jitsu, because really most of the people in jiu-jitsu are the same way. But also part of being part of WVGO and helping Butch out is that it really is about giving people an opportunity to experience what competition's like, to get a lot of matches, to get some sort of exposure. And had it not been for WVGO, like when I started competing, my trajectory would have been a lot different. I was lucky enough that I was on a fight to win card. I got to do that kind
Yeah,
of
that's
stuff,
awesome too.
and a big part of that was all the training that came up, all the competition that came up before that, and WVGO was a big part of that. And I don't think people recognize how much Butch sacrifices. And maybe I'm starting to sound like a little kiss ass, and Butch doesn't want to hear this, but I know how much time out of his day it takes, and it's because I got to help him, and I didn't put in half the effort that he does.
It's not easy to put those together.
No, no, and when you're talking about, like, not only do you have to put these brackets together and try and figure out if there are super fights to put on, and then you got angry parents coming up to you afterwards, and you got, hey, this call didn't go that way, or this call didn't go this way, and I've been just helping out. I was the referee. I screwed up, and like, I make those mistakes, and like trying to negate all those mistakes, not only your own mistakes but everybody else's mistakes. Like, I can't do that. I can't do what he does, and I appreciate how much he puts into it. And it's not just, like, obviously Butch is my friend, and I love him, and so I feel that I have a little more with him than I do others. But all of the promoters, whether it be Grappling Industries or AGC or Fuji, all of these guys are giving us an opportunity to put our talents on the show.
I agree.
I'm always going to be thankful for that. Always.
Same here, and that's why I always try to support it. Anytime. I mean, almost every time since I've had a school, being back here and everything, since we've had our own school, since we've built what we've built so far, to because it took a couple of years to build the kids competition team. Like before it was just me and basically just Joe, competing, on the WVGO, and WVGO, sorry. And now we got, tons of kids, coming to it. They love it. They have a great time. It's I've had a lot of them, a lot of my kid students, that be their first tournament to get their feet wet in. And it's a great one to also get your feet wet in, but also to display local talent, like you said, but even, going against the local talent, because there's some stiff competition, I mean, almost every super fight I've ever had, you know, at WV Go, I've lost, you know, every one of them has been tough. All the bracket, you know, the people in the brackets. This time was the first time I got to do an actual bracketed WV Go, and you know, and I had a lot of fun. I did, you know, and that's why, you know, I'm just gonna always continue to support it, you know, and I'll you know, continue to compete at it, just like I'll, you know, whenever Fuji and stuff like that, you know, come, you know, I like to also support them as well, because I think it's important to support these grappling tournaments, you know, because you do have different talents that come from all over and stuff like that. Just like when I went down to Florida recently for Pans, you know, I wanted to do that because I wanted to test myself on a level of that as well, and you know, and it's different, you know, no matter what, you're still gaining experience from those tournaments, you know, like the WVGO and stuff like that, and you know, and I absolutely love doing them, you know, and so do the kids, you know, the parents love the experience they get every time they come there too, you know, for the West Virginia Go.
Well, and I think that's echoed by just about everybody who comes to it. I don't know anybody. It's like, don't go there, you know.
Exactly.
And if I did hear that, I would question why they were in jiu-jitsu, or if I want to conversate with them anymore, because I've not had a bad experience. Obviously, there's been bad instances, but not bad overall experiences, right?
Well,
And
as
that's gonna be
every tournament that happens. You know,
Yeah.
look, I've been to grappling industries where, you know, I've had some shitty refs, you know, I've been to Copa where I've had some bad calls and stuff like that, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm there to get the experience, you know. Now if I, you know, like if it was like a really, really bad call, I would obviously be like, all right, now come on, man, you know,
Yeah.
but still, you know,
I do
that's the
think
way I look
it's
at things.
one good thing about our tournament is and like Gary, since you brought it up, right? Like you apologize profusely to people that didn't even care. Right? Like we don't run from it. You know what I mean? Like if somebody mess up, like I guess that's what always kind of bugged me up about people, that if they did complain and I saw it complain later, because usually we address it. You know, there's, like you said, there's not always, there's an instance that will happen somewhere. On my side, like when it's happened, I'll say, okay, well, why don't do you guys just want to roll again? I'll give, like, for example, if it say it was a championship and somebody got first and somebody got second, and the guy that took second's pissed, I'll say, well, here's what I'll do. The guy at one will keep his gold medal. You guys can go again. If you win, I'll give you another gold medal, and we'll call you like both champions, right? I think that's pretty fair, right? I mean, like, I'll do whatever. I'm like, that's the only way to fix it. Like, I can't fix it now. It's over. Because I've had people come up to me and show me a video, and look, man, like, we're all human. People make mistakes. It's not on purpose. You know, that's the only thing like that ever would bother me, if somebody thinks that somebody did something on purpose. Because like the truth is, it's the opposite. I would think it's like, especially we try the best we can to Gary not to ref his guys or his friends or vice, but sometimes it happens. I could see how somebody could be like, well, maybe he did this, but I promise you, it didn't. It's worse, right? Like I know when I'm reffing and it ends up being like one of my guys, they're not getting any close calls, man. They're just not.
Josh.
They're gonna say,
So I actually refed one of my guys' matches last time, and I talked to him afterwards, and I said, I didn't give, you had to submit him to get anything. Like, I wasn't giving you anything. It was going to have to be so obvious that people were upset that I didn't give you points. Because I wasn't going to give you anything. Like, I needed you to murder somebody in order to get the win. That way I didn't feel bad. Like, if it wasn't so one-sided, lopsided. And that's the thing, is because I don't want to look biased. I don't want to look like I had any weight in the decision, you know? Guys, we've been on here for 2 hours and 45 minutes. It is
Time flies.
it is time to get off here.
Right.
Jeremy, thank you. Oh, the cat's coming to say hi.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, thank you for coming on, man. It's awesome to see you again. If we ever have another match at WVGO, I'm gonna ask Butch if we can have strobe lights.
Are you trying to kill me? No, I'm just joking.
I just wanted an advantage. That's all. That's all. I just wanted an advantage.
I was a little late to that joke. I got it after. I was like, strobe lights. What? Okay. I'm thinking like romance or something. But I got you now.
But anyway, we're gonna have some sort of jumbotron and anime will be playing in the background. That way,
Awesome.
that way I have a little bit of advantage. But brother, it was great to have you on. Pleasure.
I
Pleasure.
I
Go ahead.
appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much. It was awesome. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever done a podcast too. So I
Well,
appreciate
you were great at it. You were great at it. But
Thank
thank you for coming on, and it's good seeing you. And thank you for supporting WVGO, and we appreciate you, man.
always, brother. I appreciate you guys so much. Butch, I appreciate you. Gary, I appreciate you guys for having me on. It was awesome. And I will always support WVGO as well. As long as Rockhouse is a place, you can bet your tail that we'll always support you guys. Okay.
Well,
I
go
definitely
ahead.
appreciate it. I was gonna say I definitely appreciate it, and I didn't want this obviously at the end. You guys are very nice. So I feel kind of weird, but that you're so nice. I feel weird for that, but and Gary, hopefully I don't cut you up, but I think we need to make sure to finish it on where they can find you. Where's your gym at? All those things. Let's finish on a.
Okay. My gym is in Lawrence County, Kentucky. It's Louisa, Kentucky. Yeah, this is a small town. The address is 114 North Main Cross Street, Louisa, Kentucky, 41230. I teach Muay Thai as well. But I teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think we've made a big difference in the town. Come and check us out. We'd love to have you.
Awesome, Gary. You want to bring us home?
Hey, guys, again, thank you for watching. Everybody who's tuning in, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without people who really care about jiu-jitsu and what we're doing, and we're just trying to spread that love. Butch,
Amen.
I love you. Jeremy, thank you. Guys, have a good
Hey,
night.
guys.
Take it easy.
Thank you guys so
All right.
much. Y'all have a great night.
All right, you too, man. You take care.
Bye.